17 years have passed since the time when our main character was last in his motherland, in Korea. The young man was standing in the columbarium in front of two urns. It was all that remained as a memory of his parents. The boy looked down at the floor. He recalled a time when he was really interested in what the price of life might be. 17 years ago, a shipwreck occurred in the Gulf of Aden. At 22 hours 33 minutes, the huge liner went to the bottom, and passengers were trying to save themselves in the water around them. Trying to stay afloat in the limitless cold water, our hero called his parents, trying to find his closest relatives in this chaos. Lifting the wreckage of the ship floating next to him, the young man saw his mother under it. The guy rushed to swim to her, but turning the woman over on her back, he saw two bloody marks on her chest and stomach. The young man did not have time to recover from what he saw when he was covered by a powerful wave that suddenly rolled in. Finding himself underwater, our main character realized that he could not breathe and that he needed to influence the surface as soon as possible. And the bloody bodies of the dead passengers of the liner floated around him. The guy saw the secretary, the security guard, the head of the company. The people he knew were dead and slowly sinking to the bottom. The young man's parents were among the dead. He saw their blood-stained bodies being swallowed by the dark water. At the moment of complete despair and powerlessness, the young man felt that someone was pulling him up. Leaning out, he saw his grandfather. The old man yelled that Tae-ha should get it together. As the boy tried to speak with a trembling voice, Jin Seok-ho, the head of the Junggu groups, thanked God for saving his grandson. Our hero shouted that his parents were down there, but the grandfather only said that he knew about everything, but it was already too late. The man seriously turned to his grandson, asking that the young man remember these words well for the rest of his life. In order not to happen, but it is Tae-ha who has to inherit their family business, Junggu Group. Then the man put a pencil in the boy's hand. He ordered to keep it, and then come to the lawyer, Kim In-soo, for help. Grandfather took off his life jacket to hand it to Vanukovo and continued to give instructions. Jin Seok-ho warned the boy not to trust anyone, and as soon as he returns to Korea, he must immediately find a lawyer. But the young man only begged the old man to save his parents. He believed that it was still possible. When Kim In-soo took off his life jacket, two bullet wounds were visible on his chest. The man pulled the means of rescue on the grandson and said that even before falling into the water, the boy's parents died from gunshot wounds. There is no hope of salvation. Fastening his vest, the head of the family pushed the young man as far as possible, shouting that he must escape. Moving away from his last living relative, our main character noticed how a huge wave was approaching his grandfather, which was about to cover him with his head. The day has come. The weak, exhausted, and crushed young man drifted unconscious among the boundless expanses of water, but he opened his eyes, feeling that he was in the shadows. A ship was fast approaching the boy. It was 1351. When the boy opened his eyes, regaining consciousness, he saw in front of him two men in white shirts with weapons. They were either happy or surprised to find that the young man was alive. Then one of them, a tall blond man, turned and shouted to his boss that the boy had regained consciousness. Tae-ha slowly came to his senses. Holding his head, he looked around and listened to see if the strangers were speaking Italian. While the blonde was watching someone on top of the mast, another man asked if our main character knew their language. Our young man managed to notice an unusual tattoo on the redhead's neck. This could mean that these people are not simple at all. In a moment, the woman jumped from the top of the mast and smoothly, like a cat, landed next to our main character. She bent over the boy, examined him intently, and seriously asked how he ended up on their boat. The guards intervened, saying that the young man did not speak their language. The woman reluctantly ordered to find an interpreter, even a sign interpreter, if that was the case. But Jin Tae-ha's interrupted their argument. He spoke in good Italian about the shipwreck in which he survived, and that their boat was attacked nearby. The woman was surprised at this development. It turns out that the boy understood them perfectly. Then she asked where their guest was from. Our main character told that he is Korean. When he and his family were swimming across the bay, armed men appeared and killed his parents and grandfather. The woman tried to understand if all this was true. After all, it was a strange coincidence that the young man survived and got on an Italian ship. Besides, on the boat of the Salerno family, everyone laughed in unison because the guy who speaks Italian happened to be on their ship, and not just anywhere, but in the middle of the Gulf of Aden. Not believing the possibility of such a coincidence, Regina Salerno pointed the dagger at Taiha's throat. The woman was the head of the sales division of the Salerno family. Trying to find at least some way out, our young man handed her the pen that his grandfather had finally given him. This was to prove that everything he said was true. The boy, holding a pen, said once again that he was the grandson of the chairman of the Korean company, Junggu Group. He tried to convince everyone that he could be useful if his life was spared and not thrown overboard. Regina had heard that the Junggu Group is the richest company in Korea. Was this guy part of that family? She ordered subordinates to check the news. While the men searched their smartphones for the latest messages, the woman asked if our hero knew any other languages. Taiha replied that he can speak a little bit of all the basic languages: English, Japanese, Hindi, Arabic, Spanish, Esperanto. Meanwhile, the guards found news from Korea. They showed Regina a notification that the group's leader, Jong, and his son and his family were missing. This meant that the boy was telling the truth. The young man remembered his grandfather's last words. He asked to keep the pen and find Kim In-soo's lawyer. This man was supposed to help. Therefore, Tae-ha asked for an opportunity to call a member of his family in Korea. It was 12 minutes past 1 in Seoul. The phone rang and the man answered the call. The voice on the other end asked if he could speak English, and then clarified whether to communicate with Kim In-soo's lawyer. The conversation was led by Regina Salerno. She asked if the lawyer had seen the photo that was sent to him, and then she asked if they should send the grandson of the famous company Junggu Group to Korea. Kim In-soo raised a glass of liquor with ice cubes floating in it to his mouth. He calmly asked what the stranger wanted in return. The woman said she wanted $10 million. She plans to exchange them for cash in the Panama Canal. The time limit was 24 hours. They had to meet in person. The man replied that he did not have time for negotiations, as he was very busy. When the money arrives, he asked to release the boy immediately. And he put his glass with a drink on the table. Then he raised the microphone to his mouth and continued to have fun at the party. Kim In-soo continued to shout into the microphone that 10 million was ridiculous. He himself is ready to give $1 million for the murder of this young man. Next, the lawyer spoke to someone on the phone, still holding the microphone to his mouth. He demanded to kill our hero as soon as possible and send him video evidence. And after that, he promised to transfer the money immediately. Kim In-soo assured that it was only a few pressures. And at this time, Jin Tae-ha was listening to all this. The guards were talking to the lawyer on a loudspeaker. Then he set a condition. If the boy is not removed, then the murderers on the ship will be hanged on the rescuers of the young man. Despair and hopelessness at this moment took possession of the hero. At that time, the lawyer reported to someone on the phone that there was no reason to worry. He had conveyed everything and warned the bandits from the neighborhood. The stranger said with satisfaction that the Junggu Group was no longer owned by the owners. He was sitting in a chair and enjoying alcohol. Jin Tae-ha was still looking at the phone. He could not believe that his life should have ended so easily in just 5 minutes. Regina Salerno took the phone and said that, unfortunately, now there is no reason to save the boy. Our main character asked for help. That woman asked why this to her. After all, now he is not a member of a rich family. And the boy heard the conversation. Most likely, the young man's funeral is already being prepared in Korea. And that could mean only one thing. They wanted to kill the boy from the very beginning. This was necessary in order to take all the power into their hands and eliminate the family of owners. While Regina was talking to the young man, her subordinates were talking. They knew that the woman was not going to kill our hero, but was just having fun. Teha tried to understand why he had to die when he survived. Why do those whose names he does not even know want to kill him? What is the essence of this position? Suddenly, one of the people ran into the room. The man was excited. He shouted loudly that the ship had been attacked. It was 3 speedboats and a helicopter. They surrounded the ship and did not hesitate to use weapons. Regina asked if it wasn't Interpol. However, this option was immediately rejected. After all, the attackers did not get in touch. It made her wonder who would dare to attack the Salerno family boat so unceremoniously. Then everything fell into place. It was the Koreans they had been talking to recently. They probably wanted to take the boy away. Jin Tae-ha took a pen out of his pocket and put it in his hand. He began to scratch the skin on the back of his hand. While they looked at him with incomprehension and surprise, he said that there was no way they would pay Chong. Therefore, there is no point in killing him. He clenched his hand into a fist. It bore the same mark as the tattoo on the neck of one of the guards. The boy said that if he gets the power to take revenge, he will be loyal to his saviors until death. While our hero was convincing that he would be useful to the Italians, Regina was surprised when he managed to notice the seal of their family. Then she laughed and ordered her men to get ready. They finally had a holiday. And then she turned to the young man and asked if he could answer for his words. Jin Tae-ha remembered his grandfather's request to become the leader of the Jeongu group, no matter what. He gritted his teeth and glared at Regina. It was a sign of tacit consent. The woman said that from now on the boy's life belongs to the Salerno family. He will live for her and must die for her. She ordered to look carefully. After all, she was his future. At that time, a helicopter was approaching them, and the savior of our main character was standing with 2 daggers in her hands, ready to fight. And so, 17 years later, the young man stood next to the urns, which did not even contain the ashes of his relatives. But only here he could say hello. He turned to his parents, assuring them that they would certainly see how he would avenge their deaths. But at that moment, a whole hail of bullets was sent to the boy. Chaos reigned around. Fragments of glass flew everywhere. Several black cars drove up to the building. A dozen gunmen continued to fire on Cheonggu Group's premises. Lee Shang-gu, the manager, was unhappy that even so his men could not kiss him, and then he ordered to find the owner as soon as possible. The man did not know who this desperado was, but breaking into a company building and hoping to get out alive was a bold move. One of the company's people found a car nearby in the parking lot and told the boss about it. When they carefully opened the car, hoping not to harm anyone inside, it suddenly exploded. And while everyone was shocked by what happened, Jin Tae-ha jumped out in front of the opponents, holding 2 slingshots in his hands. The security manager noticed the black suit. He lunged at the boy, exclaiming that it was cowardly to sneak up on him. But our main character did not remain silent and noted that it is definitely not Lee Chang-gu who should be talking about this. And in a few moments he delivered a series of quick and accurate blows. In a few more minutes, the young man's opponent fell. His body was like a sieve, dismembered and bloody. There were more questions than answers. Everyone was interested in how it happened and who this guy was. Our hero approached a white car parked near the car that exploded. The boy opened the door and looked inside. There he found a bag of money, closed the door, and walked around the car, heading for the trunk. Opening it, he heard the lawyer's voice. The man was tied up and begged Jin Tae-ha to have mercy on him and let him go. He tried to convince that he was only following instructions from above, and that what was done was not his initiative at all. The young man cold-bloodedly poured money from the bag directly on the lawyer. He paid no attention to his excuses. Tae-ha said it was $10 million. The money that was promised to him 17 years ago has finally reached the addressee. The lawyer was shocked by what he heard. Our main character said that on that day, on the verge of life and death, he was reborn. And at that moment he pulled out a lighter, lit it on fire, and threw it into the trunk. The flame rose higher and higher. The guy took out a cigar from his pocket and lit it from the fire that covered the car. He turned to his parents and grandfather and apologized for being late. The smoke from the car rises higher and higher. The boy hoped that his family would end up in a bright and much better world. He promised that he would take care of the rest himself. Our main character was walking away from the parking lot. Behind him lay the corpses of Changgu Group's bodyguards and crimson smears of blood on the asphalt. Then the guy moved on to the next point of his plan. But no one was going to just let the young man into the office. The company's guards fired machine guns at him, trying to finish him off. But after a few seconds, they were already dead. Tae-ha dodged the bullets and cut the throats of the shooters accurately and quickly with his daggers. Having found himself in the security company, the boy approached the man, who was sitting scared in the corner and watching what happened. He tried to find out who sent the young man, and then yelled at our hero that they were working with Chong, so he wouldn't be able to get out of here alive. Calmly wiping the fresh blood off his dagger, Jin Tae-ha began to say that AH Holdings was a private security company that Jong had subcontracted with. This surprised the man very much, and the boy continued. Their job was to ensure the safety of the company's key executives and directors in the Gangbuk-gu area during off hours. Most of his non-security time is spent investigating the private lives of reporters, whistleblowers, and others opposed to Chong. It was an enterprise that worked under contract and kidnapped, beat, and killed people. Tae-ha walked into a room where 3 bound prisoners were sitting on the floor. He threw one of his daggers at them and ordered them to free themselves and get out of here. They were to forget that they had ever seen him. Having freed themselves from the ropes, the prisoners returned the weapons to their owners, thanked them, and ran away. They ignored the shouts of the security company employee, who desperately ordered them to stop. The man asked who our hero was. He assumed that he might be some kind of relative. But the hero took off the mask that covered half of his face and assured that he was not involved with any of those people. But it would be difficult to speak in their presence. Jin Tae-ha said he needed the management schedule for this week. From the executive director to the chairman of the board, they were to be guided by the Statute Number 1 on holding emergency meetings. But in response, the man only shouted that he did not know anything. And if he had known, he would not have told, because then his whole family would perish. The boy leaned towards the guard and pointed the tip of the dagger blade at his pupil. He saw that the man wanted to live, so he decided to start with the eye to talk to the man. Our hero was walking the streets of the city and thinking that he should buy Korean cigarettes. After all, his cigars were too visible here. The young man looked around. He's not been to Korea for a very long time. At first glance, life here seemed normal, but still there was a feeling that this country had gone mad. Their president once promised that he would use all the opportunities and privileges of his office to root out crime and violence in society. But when he stood behind the tribune and was about to publicly announce the beginning of this struggle, his speech was cut short in mid-sentence. In 1999, the president who declared a war on crime passed away. A bullet hit his head right behind the tribune. No one was able to eliminate criminal organizations, so the country began to sink into violence and succumb to the power of money. Chung worked with criminal organizations to eliminate competitors and control the media. And after that, they started sponsoring sports and entertainment to make sure that no one would be interested in politics. It reached such an absurdity that the eyes would be closed even when a dog was running for president. And despite all this, people still believed that Chong was a people's enterprise. Our main character entered the supermarket and approached the cash register. He was going to buy cigarettes and accidentally asked for the goods at the same time as another young man. They even held out the same bills. The boys glanced at each other and then added the plus sign at the same time, simultaneously handing the money to the saleswoman. The girl was a little embarrassed and said that there was only 1 pack left. Tae-ha sighed and told the saleswoman to give the cigarettes to the other guy, and he will get by. Our young man was standing at the entrance to the store. He stopped the guy who had given him a cigarette and asked him to treat him to one. The stranger remarked that our hero could have bought cigarettes at any other store. Jin Tai-ha said that he has not been to Korea for a long time. That's why I wanted to buy them just to smoke one. The guy took out a pack and treated our hero to a cigarette. He noted that this is nostalgia for a rather lousy cigar. In parting, the stranger warned that smoking was prohibited there. If the young man is caught doing this, he will be taken away. So it is better to find a suitable place for this activity. Our main character was holding a cigarette and thinking that after living 17 years among the mobsters, he can determine the level of a person just by looking at them up close. This stranger was strong. It was comparable to the monsters Tae-ha had encountered abroad. The boy wondered if there were many masters of this level in Korea. Our hero hoped that he would not have to meet this young man in a duel after all. Meanwhile, the stranger came to the building of the security company and saw only the dead bodies of the workers on the floor. After examining everything, he noticed that there were only puncture wounds on the bodies. It looked like someone was cutting sushi. Then the guy called someone. An irritated voice asked what had happened and reminded him that he had forbidden ringing at this hour. But the young man only asked if a meeting was planned for today, and then added that it should be cancelled. After all, the killer Kim In-soo started hunting for the stranger's secret interlocutor. He said that he was unable to contact the security company that was supposed to help with the protection today. That's why I came there myself, but someone dealt with them. The attacker was armed with a knife. The boy suggested that it looked a lot like the one who killed the lawyer. It is possible that he knows the place of the secret meeting. The interlocutor was sitting drinking wine. He was surprised at what he heard, because the Chung family always gathers in emergency situations, so no one could find out about this tradition and attack. Therefore, the search for the killer was entrusted to our stranger, and the most important condition was that no one should know about it. While the stranger was sitting over the body, examining the traces of a knife, he remembered our hero, who asked for a cigarette. More precisely, traces of cuts on his palms. These are difficult to obtain if you do not own such a weapon. Jung Hui-min, the seventh in the five-star group, asked his interlocutor if there is anyone in their family who owns knives, but there were none. They could not even peel an apple. In addition, all family members were with him, except for the children. But taking into account the excitement, the young man was offered an additional 100 million for security services. Jung Hui-min said he would come, but he still insisted that security should be strengthened. Such persistence began to annoy the interlocutor. He grunted that he understood and hung up. Then he gave his phone to a subordinate and continued to be indignant that he, a gangster, was telling him how to act. This can lead to death. Then the head went to the meeting. Hui Min then called the president. He said that he was only helping Chong until today. And then he wants to leave. An additional 100 million won was able to convince him to stay for a while. After all, only a fool could refuse such an amount. Then the boy told someone that it is difficult to tell in detail, but it seems that they are being pursued by a serious enemy. Meanwhile, our hero was standing behind the stranger. When Hui Min noticed the figure of our young man, he ended the conversation. He joked that one cigarette probably wasn't enough. Tae-ha replied that there must be a reason why a specialist could be found near the crime scene. He was following a stranger. The young man grabbed his head. On this day, he was embarrassed more than once. First a cigarette, then surveillance. The boy chastised himself. This happened to him for the first time. He lost his vigilance and did not notice the tail. Before starting, our protagonist asked if his opponent was also from Chong. Hui Min recalled that he was just on the phone and said that he was only helping the company. Tai-ha should have heard that. It didn't change anything. In a fraction of a second, our guy took out his knives and charged. His opponent quickly parried the blow. Their match was exciting. Strong, fast, skillful warriors met in a duel. Jung Hui and Min swung to strike his opponent, only to find his weapon flying into small pieces. and he didn't even notice when Jin Tae-ha cut her. But what was much more important was that the opponent disappeared. The boy looked around intently, but there was no sign of the warrior. Just looking up, he noticed his opponent on the wall, who was preparing for another attack. Hui Min said that Chongu is really unhappy. You don't have to be very lucky to be the target of such a monster. And at this time, our hero was approaching him in the air with knives at the ready. Without weapons, the boy had little chance to emerge victorious from this battle, and he understood it. In a moment, a powerful gift knocked him off his feet and threw him several meters. Jung was lying on the asphalt. A bloody wound was visible on his chest, and our young man was walking away. But suddenly, Tae-ha heard the faint voice of his opponent. The boy wanted to know what the warrior's plan was. After all, he tracked down his opponent, defeated him, but left him alive and just walks away. Therefore, the question was whether our hero would regret his act. But the Avenger had his own rules, which he was not going to break. The young man only killed Chongu's men. He advised not to pursue, not to stop, and not to get in his eyes. And if Jong Hui-min helps the company again, he won't be pardoned a second time. Tae-ha said if the opponent is so worried, then it can be considered as paying back the cigarette debt. The defeated, wounded boy was lying face down. Staring into the dark night sky, he realized that he had been given life in exchange for a cigarette. It turned out that he was worth very cheap. Our protagonist returned to his parked car. Already sitting behind the wheel, he grimaced in pain. The boy was injured in the battle. The wound was shallow, so he could move. Moreover, Jin Tae-ha was going to take revenge, the plan of which had been hatching for 17 years. He had 32 minutes left. The boy plunged into dark, lingering memories. There was a lot of blood and horror in them. His mother covered his eyes to protect him and prevent him from seeing his father's death. The boy rushed to his father, who was standing in front of a group of armed criminals. He was afraid, but he wanted to help. But Jin Soo-hyuk, our protagonist's father and the company's managing director, yelled at his wife to take Tae-ha and run away. The woman obeyed, although the young man did not want to leave his father. The mother took her son to a safe place and ordered to find a life jacket and jump into the sea. She leaned over her son and said that he must survive. Her eyes were full of tears, and at this time, a man in uniform pointed a machine gun in their direction. He said that he was very annoyed by this very scene. And then he added that he had said from the very beginning that it was necessary to blow up everyone and everything. Another moment and he would have fired. Our hero's mother shouted for the boy to run away from there as soon as possible. There was no choice. Jin Tae-ha ran as hard as he could, falling and getting up again, his eyes filled with tears, and his whole body was filled with despair and fear. And within a few minutes, the ship exploded. This day completely turned his life around. And so, 17 years later, the Chong leadership gathered in a secret hideout in Kanbuka. Jin Ju-hee, the eldest daughter and headmistress, was drinking wine at dinner and asked who killed their lawyer. Jin Ja-seong, the second son and director of Jong's Foreign Trade Association, took a cigarette out of his cigarette case. He noted that the deceased lived for 2 families, so it is possible that the murder was ordered by his mistress. The woman remarked that she did not understand how it was possible to be so disgusting. However, the brother added that it is not for her to judge. Having lovers, Jin Jon-won, the head of Jong's car company, the 4th son, asked pragmatically what fate Kim In-soo's CEO held. The guy wanted to deal with it as soon as possible. But all these conversations were interrupted by a hand strike on the table. The man who sat at the head of the family gathering asked for silence. It was Jin Gu-ho, the eldest son, the head of Chonggu Electronics. He turned to his eldest son, Jin Jong. He, smiling, said that 2 of their employees remained at the scene of the incident. After making sure that there were no other witnesses, these people were removed, and the interrogation did not bring any results. These workers were only subcontractors and knew nothing. And in order to avoid information leakage, everything was explained to the police. But the father was not so optimistic. He threw a glass of wine at his son, apparently displeased to hear that. As everyone watched with bated breath, Jin Gu-ho asked about the 5 stars. Jin Jong, after a short stupor, put on a smile again and replied that they didn't know anything and asked to send someone. The choice fell on Jung Hui Min. The boy had the 7th place in the rating. Father did not like it. The son's head was hit again by a bottle, and then the notation because the killer was still unknown and at large. In addition, the 5-star group has been informed, holding a broken bottle near his son's throat. The man continued to say that if the manager and Jin Soo-hyuk had not died 17 years ago, such an incompetent would not have been accepted into the family. Wounds and bruises were visible on the boy's forehead, but he still said with a smile that he was just as easy to find in South Korea as Chong. It only takes 12 hours. At the table, brother and sister whispered to each other. They wondered why everything still remains the same. The father hates his eldest son and always treats him badly. But in reality, everything was not quite like that. Father didn't hate Jin Jong. He was afraid of him. The guy left the room after such a tense conversation. He took a napkin to wipe his forehead and asked the assistant to give him the phone. Then he asked how their boys were doing. The girl replied that everything is fine. Jungman was a little nervous. He said that he was worried and was very interested in how things would turn out. A white car sped down the road. Our main character was thinking about everything that happened during these 17 years while driving. All this time, he was following Chong. It started the very day he was taken in by the Salerno family, a scared little boy. When our young man's grandfather died, his eldest son Jin Gu-ho took over the shares and became the head of the firm. Things went very fast. Everything was decided before the funeral was over. The man took advantage of the chaos that followed the failure of the war on crime. He decided to unite with other forces, for example, with the 5 Stars organization. This helped consolidate his power. From then on, the world belonged to Chong. But at the earliest need, the family would come to the secret vault for a family gathering. Everything has always been like this since the time of my grandfather. Traditions have not changed, but he killed his grandfather to change this system. And our hero's father, and mother, and himself. Meanwhile, the security guard of the company saw a stranger's car, which was recorded by a surveillance camera. The man immediately called the management. He asked if anyone else was coming. But I heard that everyone is already in place. The guard reported that a car was approaching the main gate at high speed right now. This alarmed everyone. Only a psycho could do that. So they decided to immediately raise the bollards. But that couldn't stop Jin Tae-ha. Even when he saw an obstacle ahead, he only pressed the gas pedal deeper. Meanwhile, the family continued their dinner. Our young man was not going to use any tricks on those who lived a cowardly life. The car hit bollards. The hood crumpled. Meanwhile, the boy managed to unbuckle his seatbelt and get his weapon. The next step was to get rid of the guards. The men barely had time to raise their heads as our hero flew at them with knives. Not even a minute passed when the young man left behind only 3 corpses with numerous cut wounds. He wanted to make a loud announcement about his return, to remember it. In the hall where the dinner was held, everyone was excited. The noise at the main gate was unusual for such gatherings, so the family was on alert. They asked Jin Jung to check what was happening outside, but he just laughed. And then he added that there is no need to check anything. At that moment, armed men entered the room and pointed their guns at the people at the table. Not understanding what was happening, family members began to panic and get angry. Jin Gu-ho frowned. He began to guess, but still uncertainly asked his son if it was really his doing. Jin Jung replied with a smile on his face that everyone should have guessed that this was bound to happen sooner or later. He said that the reason for his father's hatred was that he was afraid of losing his place and dying like his grandfather once had, because it was Jin Jong who killed my father's grandfather and younger brother. When he said this, there was a look of self-satisfaction on his face, and at this time, our main character approached the building. He was ready to begin the implementation of his plan, which he had been developing for 17 long years. Guards met him at the fence. They were ready to act in the event of an attack. Moreover, only one guy penetrated them. The family at the table could not believe that one of them dared to point guns at his relatives. But Jinjong only pretended not to understand anything. He asked in surprise what he had done, and then assured that he had done nothing. Such jokes threw his relatives off balance. They started shouting that such behavior was not appropriate and ordered them to lower their weapons. Jin Ju-hee turned to her bodyguard and ordered to deal with her brother. But he, like the rest of the guards of other family members, received a good reward for betrayal. Therefore, they were not going to do anything for protection. Father sat at the table with a dejected look. He said that he expected such a betrayal from anyone, but not from his own people. Even Baek Jun-soo, head of security and Jin Gu-ho's personal bodyguard, remarked that he was no longer guarding the man, but protecting Jong. Jin Jong-wo shouted that they were the Joseon dynasty, so it's a completely stupid plan to get a seat in Chong like that. One of the guards approached the noisy man and corrected him that it was the Jin Jong Committee, and then he put the gun to his head and fired. The next victims were the eldest daughter Jin Ju-hee and the second son Jin Ja-seong. Jin Gu-ho bowed his head and said that he understood that his son would do something like this one day, the day his younger brother died of leukemia without a single wound, and the wife, not having received any payments, filed for divorce. All this was the work of his son. Father had a premonition. Probably that is why I kept as far away from him as possible. At this time, the man already felt anger and hatred. Jin Jong approached his father and put the muzzle of a gun to his head. He recalled how 17 years ago he had sent a young man, as if he were a special agent, on a ship to the Gulf of Aden to kill his grandfather and brothers. The man shouted that he should have done it. If the post of manager went to Soo Hyuk's son, they wouldn't be here at all now. But the boy was interested in why he never received the place of the heir. He bent down to his father's head, resting his forehead against his forehead. The man answered honestly that he thought that if he gave up the place of the heir, he would die at the hands of his own son. Jin Jong agreed that it would indeed be the case. However, he added that he was sorry to hear it. He now held the gun near Jin Gu-ho's heart. The man said that even if his son kills him, he will not get the position of leader. The young man said he knew change of power due to political or material coups was not recognized. Such were the rules of the committee. But the question was what to do with someone who was on the street and not at all on the side of the family. The father did not understand who he was talking about. Jin Jong said that the aristocrat who had been waiting for revenge for 17 years would cover it all up. And then he fired a bullet into the man's head. And our main character single-handedly dealt with a dozen armed guards who tried to stop him, but he confidently moved forward. The boy understood that the main forces of Chong-gu's group were under the command of the security service. That is, at least the heads of the security department were to be bodyguards for managers. Our main character wondered if this could mean that they were all here. It solved many problems. Quickly orienting himself, Tae-ha bypassed several guards and, like a shield, covered himself with one of the security chiefs. He immediately forbade all his men to shoot, but perhaps being nervous in a stressful situation, one of the men pulled the trigger. Our young man immediately rushed into the attack. A few moments later, the shooter stared at his weapon in a daze. The barrel of the gun was cut in two by the blade of a sharp knife, and the young man confidently went to the long-awaited revenge, killing all the guards on his way. Realizing that the situation was getting out of hand, one of the security chiefs ordered his men to evacuate Corporation Chief Chong-gu. At this point, our protagonist threw one of his knives to prevent this instruction from being carried out. Security chiefs Kim Il-seok, Kim Cheol-soo, and Yang Cheol-ho came to find out what the cause of the commotion was. They had been working for 10 years and were surprised that only one person had arranged all this. But this was Kim Cheol-soo's area of responsibility. That is why he insisted that he would manage on his own. His colleague noted that this would affect performance ratings. Tae-ha, meanwhile, continued to fight. He felt pain, which meant that the young man was injured. And at that moment, unexpectedly, he received a powerful punch from the head of the security service. It threw him several meters. The man wanted to finish what he had started and was already preparing to deliver a few more blows. He shouted that he would kill the boy for daring to come there. Our hero agreed that now is not the time to exchange physical strength. He held a knife firmly in his hand, and in the next moment he cut the body of the attacker with a strong, accurate blow. The man froze with his fist at the ready. The other two colleagues of the head of the security service were shocked by what they saw. But they didn't even have time to fight back. The young man did not even give them a chance to use their weapons. His sharp knives took the lives of men in a flash. That's how he got to the entrance of the house, and the wounded head of the security service was barely dragging behind him. He survived and was going to take revenge on his offender. Tae-han noted that it took longer to get here than he thought, and it was suspiciously quiet in the house itself. Looking around, the boy began to think that everyone had escaped through a secret passage that he might not know about. But then he went into the room, and Jin-jung was waiting for him. He was sitting with a gun on the table. Corpses were lying around. The guy invited our hero to sit down and rest after such a difficult journey here. This was not what Tae-ha expected. Those whom he had come to kill lay on the floor with iconic wounds, and Chunggu's manager was sitting at the table with a hole in his head. The guy said that our hero is even cooler than he thought. And working as a killer, apparently, does not prevent him from taking care of his skin. And after this young man said that they had not seen each other for a long time, and called our boy's name, he realized that it was the elder, Jin Gu-ho, in front of him. Jin-jung said that the conversation could be casual since their parents were friends. Then he said that he was very sad here, that's why he was waiting for a guest. And he added that he considers it his duty to explain everything. The boy recalled the events of 17 years ago, when our hero almost drowned and was picked up by an Italian mafia ship. In fact, the helicopter was already ready at that time. At this moment, Jin-jung was approached by his assistant. The girl said that it was dangerous to stay here and it was time for them to go, but the boy was determined to finish his story. Therefore, he ordered her not to disturb. And then Tae-ha realized that he had heard that voice before. There could be no mistake. 17 years ago, the one who killed his relatives said the same thing so that he would not be disturbed. The same intonation. The special agent was in gear, but pointing the machine gun at his parents, said that he would kill everyone, and then he was going to blow up the ship. Our main character's eyes were bloodshot. He realized that the one he was looking for was now standing right in front of him. The one who ruined his life. Jin-jung continued to speak informally. He said with a smile on his face that he wanted to kill Jin Tae-ha. Our young man prepared for battle. He shouted that now is the time to do it, because he came here for the same thing. And in response, I heard that when you come to Korea, you have to behave normally. Then he was asked if he wished to continue this informal conversation. Our boy thought. Jin-jung knew that Tae-ha had survived 17 years ago, and that the young man had been taken by the Salerno family and had become a killer. But why did he not do anything until now? But started a coup when the hero returned. The young man firmly decided that the coup should not succeed. After all, there must be a reason for such an attack. If successful, his opponent will be able to rise to the post of manager. And this cannot be allowed. Meanwhile, all the traitorous guards gathered in the room and were already preparing to fulfill their main task: to kill the boy. The bullets fired at our young man never hit the target. He skillfully dodged or fought them off with knives. Chung's men took turns trying to neutralize their enemy. They fired a lot of bullets at him, but he still managed to avoid being wounded. However, they seemed to like such a difficult task. The thugs realize that Tae-ha is much faster than they say he is. But the attackers were skilled not only in firearms. Next, the bodyguard, a master in hand-to-hand close combat, got down to business. But none of his shots hit the target. The man wondered if flexibility was the secret of this guy. Our main character was as focused as possible to dodge all the attacks. Meanwhile, he thought that these people were head and shoulders above those who were outside. Probably they are the main strength of Chong. Even without careful preparation, he planned to do everything at once from the very beginning. And now Jin Jong was losing his vigilance. It was a good chance until the bodyguard of the leader, Baek Jun-soo. He assumed that the woman was also a bodyguard. So there were only 3 mercenaries here. So there were 4 family members at today's meeting. A man with a scar on his face rushed at our hero. His fists had brass knuckles, but as he approached to hit the young man with all his might, Tae-ha saw a reflection in his eyes. Another guard was approaching behind with a sword. With a precise, sharp movement, our main character jumped to the side, and the attackers only hit the air, barely losing their balance. Gritting his teeth, our boy repeated in his mind that there was only one person left. His goal was already so close, and the guards negotiated, keeping their weapons and fists at the ready, that it was necessary to choose a place for a preliminary attack more carefully. The kind where light would not be reflected. But if everything were so simple, they would have solved this task a long time ago. Here, a third guard with a gun joined them. He cheerfully asked what the reward was for killing the young man. Now the task has become more difficult. Tae-ha had to dodge the bullets of 2 shooters at once. Jin Jong watched what was happening from the corridor. Behind him stood his bodyguard. The guy only commented that when our hero is far away, he should be shot, and when he is close, he should fight. And then he added that these people were specially trained to catch our young man. Even in Interpol, there are legends about his incredible speed. Those words puzzled Tae-ha a bit, and his opponent continued to say that he had originally planned to kill him with a bomb. But after seeing how calmly the young man was fighting, he realized that he would look like a savior then. Meanwhile, the mercenaries decided to try to limit our boy's ability to move. This would reduce his incredible speed. To put the plan into practice, the man with the knuckles rushed headlong to deliver a powerful and unexpected blow. Jin Jung was smiling with satisfaction. He only said that Tae-ha did a good job, and at that moment, the guard was already standing in front of our young man. It seems this time, he hit the target. 4 years ago, Regina Salerno stood in the room and angrily asked the boy what they should do now. Tae-ha had to deal with the manager. But instead, a terrible picture opened before them. A crucified man hung above the sofa. The walls were painted with blood. A young man sat nearby with knives in his hands, his head down. This was not the first time the family had seen this, but no one gave such instructions to our hero and did not force him to hurry. He could do everything calmly at his own pace. Lorenz, the red-haired man Tae-ha met on the first day on the Italian ship, had always treated him well. Regina Salerno understood that perhaps it was because of this that the young man painfully felt the pain of betrayal. But she noted that if he continued to kill in this way, it would only create animosity towards the boy. The woman asked for the sake of herself, for the sake of his teacher, and for the sake of the entire Salerno family, never to do such a thing again. But in response, she heard from Tae-ha that if he didn't do that, they wouldn't know. This phrase puzzled, so Regina decided to question what the boy meant. Our hero then replied that when a person who betrayed his family dies quietly, others will not feel or understand it. It is necessary to know, so that rumors about the terrible death of the family traitor spread like a plague. It is necessary to exaggerate them, expose them, but vividly convey them all to the living. Then they will not betray. Otherwise, find and kill again those who dare to do this. The young man was extremely serious and determined then. In order not to kill, one must kill in the most important way. Regina Salerno repeated these words as a conclusion from the boy's bizarre speech. She found it hard to believe that a man standing in the middle of the Phlegethon River without a single drop of blood on his face would carry such nonsense. Exhaling, the woman said that, as expected, the role of a killer does not suit the young man. Such a successful, it would seem, hit by the guard ended in a complete fiasco for him. A few seconds later, he collapsed, breathless from nasal wounds. No one expected this. In a moment, the second mercenary with a sword died at the hands of our hero. He too was powerless against dexterity and sharp blades. Incredible speed can defeat a sword. All who saw his full power died underestimating it, because he was really strong. The third guard was no longer so confident. He felt fear and hopelessness. The head of security appeared behind Jin Jong and his bodyguard. He was calm and confident. The man ordered to take the boy to a safe place as soon as possible. Our hero managed to notice that his enemy was leaving. He started shouting and rushed to intercept. Tae-ha knocks down the gun-wielding guard in his way and rushes towards his victim. Baek Jun-soo, the head of the security service, blocked his way. He called the boy by name and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Our main character recognized the man. He jumped up, crossed his knives, and wanted to strike. But what a surprise it was that the man stopped the sharp blades with only 2 fingers of one hand. Baek Jun admitted that the young man had grown incredibly, and with the other hand, clenched into a fist, he prepared to strike. From this powerful blow, the boy flew up. He felt a terrible pain in his chest. This meant that the ribs were broken. While the young man coughed up blood, the man broke his weapon with one hand, as if it were a toy. Then he said that that was the end of it, and kicked the guy in the body. With no effort, Baek Jun-soo knocked him down. However, the man did not manage to get out of this duel unscathed. He noticed that our hero had wounded him in the shoulder. The security chief then looked around and noticed one of his men lying in the corridor. He was knocked off his feet by a young man. So the man ordered him to get up, because he knows that he is fine. The boy awkwardly held his head. He said he was a little surprised, and in general, he almost did not die. Baek Jun said that they will soon blow up everything here, so he had to take his colleague and climb from here to the street. Meanwhile, our main character continued to lie on the floor of an empty room. When the man entered the helicopter, Jin Jong asked if everything was finished. The answer was that everything is fine. Once they take off, everything will be activated. The boy wanted to fly faster. He took the guard by the shoulder as he tried to close the door and told him to get behind the wheel. But the man, already wearing headphones, insisted that the closed door would protect them from possible shrapnel. The guy understood it. However, he wanted to see the moment he had been waiting for so long. Jin Jung stood in the helicopter that was taking off and looked at the house that he always hated fiercely. Moon Da-in sat without a mood. For her boss, family has always been a key topic, even after that disaster. It was said that he did not want to give up power. In addition, he left the girl when he was leaving that house at the moment when everything became as dangerous as possible. Jin Jung looked down and sympathized with our hero. People were always dying around him. And then he turned and said that at first the word family came from the word slave, famulus. Picking up the remote control for the explosives, the boy wondered if he could change Chong and pressed the button. The building exploded. Tae-ha regained consciousness and heard the sound of a helicopter somewhere nearby. He knew what it was like to do what was planned, and while Jin Jung stood in the open door and admired the flames from the explosion, our young man managed to reach the entrance of the helicopter unnoticed. And then the boy plunged the blade of his knife right into the calf of his enemy. He screamed loudly in pain, scaring the guards. Tae-ha drove the weapon deeper and deeper. He turned to his opponent, saying that the person who killed not only their family, but also his family, will not be able to sleep peacefully. The young man shouted that he would kill Jin Jong. His face was already abundantly covered with drops of blood. Moon Dae In came over with a gun to deal with the guy. However, Her boss unceremoniously drew his weapon and ordered her not to climb. The boy shouted that he is the main character in this story, not our young man, and started shooting down. To protect himself from the bullets, Tae-ha had to let go of his hands. He was rapidly falling down from a great height. And on board the helicopter, they nervously relayed the emergency situation to Severance Chong. A cyclist on a walk saw the boy's body in a stream. He thought it was too late to save him. He looked bad, but as he was about to leave, the boy heard a quiet request for help. The stranger was alive. Tai-ha continued to plead for salvation, and also, like a mantra, he repeated that this is far from the end. The voice message asked for help. Someone refused to pass an alcohol test for the third time and continued to call himself a representative of the House of Representatives. The guy was sitting at the computer and energetically typing. He wrote whether the interlocutor knows who he is. It was Kim 20. The young man confidently wrote that everyone wanted him to stretch. Then he tried to sell for 200,000 a photo compromise to an authority figure from the ruling party. But the interlocutor paid only 30. This upset the boy. But no one wanted to buy compromising material on politicians. But the elections were still far away. He was offered the usual market price, but they could pay 10 times more for celebrities. Well, for Chunga, 1,000 times. The young man leaned back in his chair. The thought of the value of information about the most influential members of the most famous family troubled him. The transmitter on the table reported an incident that occurred at the third intersection of Chong Row. The boy turned off the device and then took his backpack and skate and prepared to leave the room. Going downstairs, he looked into a small cafe. There were no visitors yet, and breakfast was being prepared in the kitchen. The woman shouted at the young man not to stop at school. He pointed to the skate and said that he would have time with it. The guy refused the offer to eat before going out, because he really didn't have that much time. He looked at his aunt and thought that the problem was that she really didn't understand anything. 3 men walked into the pub. They arrogantly said that such a tasteless soup would never be sold here. That is why they offered to vacate the premises. Standing in front in a suit was Jo Bok-soo, the leader of the Yaburi group. He mockingly asked again if the woman agreed to leave here, but she just continued to cut the ingredients, muttering that again they had come for interest since the very morning. And then she added that she is really busy now. Then she turned to the young man and told him not to worry, but to go to school. Nothing happened. When the boy was already at the door, Jo Bok-soo took out a weapon from his jacket. He said that one should not hastily evaluate other people's actions. Aunt owed 2 months' worth of interest, so their patience was running out. A man in a suit sat down on one of the tables and drove a knife into the surface. He insisted that the woman sell the premises now and take the money, and their profit will be interest. But she stood her ground. Giving away the cafe for half price was a bad decision. Therefore, the owner refused and sent them to learn mathematics better and then come for interest. The boy went out and exhaled, knowing what bad people those men were. He lived in the 3rd lane of Wancheng-gu district. It was a disputed territory due to reconstruction. There is competition among groups behind companies such as Chonggu and Osompa. The territory is left unattended, so the tension grows. In any case, during reconstruction, it is illegal to use small organizations just to get money. But for the aunt and this young man to live in hiding, it was an absolutely perfect place. When the boy returned from school, he saw a woman in the kitchen. She asked him to clear the table, but bruises were visible on her face. The young man asked what happened. A man sitting and eating soup said that the people of Yaburi's party were angry. Recently, they demand to sell the premises, raising the issue of reconstruction. The aunt tried to calm the boy down. She asked not to worry, to leave her things, sit down, and eat quietly. He went to his room, threw his backpack and skateboard on the floor, and sat down in a chair. Clutching his head, he tried to think of what to do next. Seo Yeon-suk's aunt was the sister of his dead father. She was once a successful professor at a medical university, but she had to leave the hospital because of Osompa's hatred. Then she took the little boy, who remained an orphan, and fled to this place. It was not her fault that she served tasteless soups and sauces with vinegar. It was not her fault at all. The guy was sitting in a room that looked more like a server room. He was typing something quickly on the keyboard, the phrase about the good payouts for celebrity defamation, and even bigger ones for Chong was running through his head. So he wrote to his regular customer and sent him 2 photos. They showed a man hugging a brunette in a red dress. Then he wrote that it was Chong's securities manager, along with the leader of EAD, and anxiously began to wait for an answer. The interlocutor asked what it meant. The young man wrote back that he was promised 10 times more for celebrities and 1,000 times more for Chonga. The very next day, Saturday, 2 men in suits approached the boy standing on the street near the store. They asked if he was Gray. Before he could answer, let alone ask who these 2 were, he was punched in the chest. Then the men dragged the boy into the car and threw him into the back seat. Now he understood very well why such a huge sum of money was paid for compromising information on Chong. It was just bait. The young man was brought to the security company, sat down at a table where a man with a folder was going through the materials opposite him. He thought it was just another spread of gossip. In fact, the guy turned out to be much worse. The manager returned to him the sheet with the 2 photos that he had sent the day before, and seriously asked where he got these photos from. The boy just sat there silently and stared at the man, gritting his teeth. The man assumed it was what his father had stolen last. He was the son of Chong Electronics senior researcher Huang Jin-gu, the man who was known to be the one who betrayed Chong. Hearing this, the young man silently smiled, but this was noticed by the man who interrogated him. Enraged, he took the watch off his wrist, put it on his fist, and hit the boy hard in the face. Continuing to strike, the people of the firm tried to find out if the young man had any other materials. And if it has, where are they? But the beatings did not produce any result. Even after falling to the floor, the boy laughed and said that if he still had compromising material, he would have sold it long ago and gotten rich. And he called the man a rag. In response, he asked his colleagues to give him a hammer. Then he leaned over the impudent and threatened to knock out all his teeth. But he was interrupted by a subordinate who entered the room at that moment and said that the director was being called to the phone. The call was from the main office, very urgent. There they gave emergency order number 1. The man was a little nervous. He cursed and said that since it was an urgent matter, he would be there now. The director got up and went to the exit, handing the hammer to one of his subordinates. He ordered that the young man's mouth be shut. The beaten and tied boy was thrown into a dark room. The man who interrogated him, closing the door, said that this was not their last conversation. Besides Gray, there were 2 other people in this small, dark room, also with tied hands and taped mouths. Now the boy had time to think. He was already beginning to think his father was crazy. After all, for a long time he was collecting incriminating material on Chong so that he could expose them later. But like my mother, he died in a car accident, so it was more logical to take money from Chong without having any power and live a quiet life. It didn't matter how good his information was. After all, without power, he was of no use. The people in this dark room heard some strange noises coming from outside. Someone shouted that it was an attack. After a while, the door opened. A guy in a black suit came in, threw a knife at them, and told them to cut the ropes and get out of here. He had a mask on his face. The young man, before walking away, turned and told them never to remember that they had ever seen him. When the prisoners fled from the premises of the security company, they finally thanked the stranger for saving them. Turning around, Gray saw that there were many corpses with stab wounds on the floor. He wondered if one person could handle them all. When the young man returned home, his aunt was horrified at his appearance in the cafe. Then she asked what happened to his face. The woman was already getting angry, but the guy assured her that everything was fine, and nothing serious had happened, and there was no need to worry. And only then, when he closed the door of his room behind him, sat down on the floor in the dark and tried to understand what had happened. He wondered who the young man was, whether he was sent by Osompa or another group. A guy single-handedly killed people with guns and only knives. His opponents were Chongu's men, but that didn't seem to bother the warrior at all. Gray opened drawer after drawer in search of the right flash drive and wondered if it was someone who had provoked this first-rate assassin, or if it was just hatred of Chong. As he placed the right medium, he remembered the interrogation in which they tried to find out if there was any more information from his father. The flash drive contained folders with recordings of conversations, information about Chong's leadership, and documents. But the boy knew that without power, none of this mattered. He needed strength. So now Gray was trying to find any information about this mysterious stranger. It was difficult, just seeing the face once. The young man was going through folders with important documents, and in one of them, he found the safety manual. If there was a serious incident in the company, an emergency management meeting was held. The partner companies controlled an area in the Gangbuk area that connected Mount Bukaksan and the Wanchungu area. The exact location will not be known until the meeting is over. The young man still did not know who the stranger was, but it seemed to him that a person whose enemy is Chongu could not be bad. The transmitter sounded a message that support was required. There was a murder at House 13 on 4th Street in Wanchungu. A large number of victims have been recorded. Emergency services are already on their way. The boy began to listen to the voice that sounded. The extent of the damage is currently unknown, but it is known that the location of the adventure was a secret mansion used by Chong's leadership. Hearing all this, the young man took his bicycle and went outside. He didn't know who that guy was, why he attacked the security firm, and in general, whether he could help in any way, but he went to the scene of the adventure. Still, it was better than sitting idle. While Gray was desperately driving, he saw someone hanging from a helicopter that was about to take off. Then a shot rang out, and soon the boy saw the man fall. He drove closer. Seeing our main character lying in the stream, the young man thought that he would die, and there was no chance. And then he heard a plea for help. Teha opened his eyes and repeated that this is not the end. Gray brought the wounded man home. Holding it on his back, he started calling his aunt from the door. The woman rushed to meet him, excited. She shouted, "Who did he bring?" The guy begged to help our hero. The rescue of this person was also very important for him. Teha was standing in the middle of the room. His hand was bandaged. The boy asked his savior who he was. Gray gave his name and said he collects and sells information, and then he added that he was waiting for exactly such a person as our hero. Our main character asked if the stranger is really a trader of information, on what received the answer that even as a wholesaler, he provides his clients with undeciphered sources and unverified data. His regular clients were other information traders, intermediaries, brokerage companies, as well as financial circles of Yoido. Our young man said that he almost died when people mistook him for an information trader. This was the guy who was caught by the security company that day. Teha then asked how the stranger found him after only seeing him once in the office. Gray smiled in satisfaction. He joked that he really knows his business and should one day get the title of the best information trader. Our main character looked around the room, then asked how many days he had already spent here. The young man answered that 4. This upset the boy. He thought about something, but only said out loud that it was too long. And then our hero asked a new acquaintance if he could find one person for him. Gray, not afraid to sound picky, said honestly that he was more fortunate to find Teha. So they cannot do without the services of information brokers, and it costs a lot of money. The guy continued a little awkwardly. Despite the fact that they saved each other's lives, it would be nice to be reimbursed for the medical expenses. After listening to all this, our main character made a conclusion, but decided to make sure if this information trader really could not help him. Having made sure of this, he prepared for the exit. As he put on his jacket, he thanked for the help. And then he added that he would definitely pay for the help when he finished. Gray tried to explain that the boy's condition was not the best yet, but Teha only said that his work is not done. Finally, he forbade the new acquaintance to get involved in this matter, because it is unlikely to end with a simple kidnapping. Going downstairs, the young man saw the kitchen where Seo Yeon-suk's aunt was cooking. The woman warned that he should not walk with such a wound. A piece of broken ribs can pop out from wrong movements. The boy bent down to thank the doctor who saved him, and he also promised to thank her later. That woman clarified that she is not a doctor, but the owner of a restaurant. So if the seams burst, don't blame her. The young man went outside and looked around. There was something like a market around. Then he heard his phone ring. Teha stopped and saw that it wasn't his phone. This puzzled him, but he still answered the call. Gray was on the other end of the phone. He said his smartphone is broken, and this model is the same. No device can withstand a fall from such a height. Unless Nokia 3310. The boy also said that there was another cover in his jacket pocket. These were headphones with a built-in microphone that had to be worn. Their battery lasts 12 hours, but the ears are connected via Bluetooth, so you have to keep them nearby. The top button of the shirt was with the camera. It should not be covered. Our hero listened to everything and then said, without hiding anything, "If anyone suspects that Gray is connected with him, then the young man will die." But Taeha's new acquaintance didn't seem scared. He asked why this should happen. Isn't the reason that the young man killed the entire Chung family? The guy continued. It turns out that after what happened, even in Korea, it will be difficult for our hero to hide. While he lay unconscious, the country was on edge with breaking news that Chong's family had died in a terrorist attack. After listening to all of this, Taeha remarked that after all of this, Gray still wanted to ask him for a favor. He said that there is a ceasefire in this place, in the Jeonsu district, in the third quarter. Cheonggu and the Osun faction fought fiercely over rescheduling issues, so Jeonggu and Osun will never find inside this zone. However, there are other problems that prevent them from living peacefully here. Since our hero stressed that he has very urgent business, Gray is willing to wait. But then he wants a favor in return. Until then, he asked not to lose contact with him. But if these conditions are not fulfilled, he will be forced to call Chong. Taeha paused. He pondered. Then he said that first he would have to assess the skills of the new acquaintance. Our protagonist has arrived at the Gwanghwamun Vault, the main and largest gate of Gyeongbuk Palace. There is a private company in Seoul that specializes in storing valuables. The guy was standing near the cells, and his partner asked if they were being watched. But there was no reason to worry. The iron rule of this firm was trust. Therefore, they never work with other companies. Most people who apply to such organizations have dirty secrets. Therefore, if you need to hide something, such places are perfect for it. Gray noticed that there was a fake passport, a wad of dollars, and a white bulletproof vest. There were no spy gadgets like a camera button. He wondered why there was no gun. The boy had a knife, but he could not fight only with him. Our young man buttoned up his shirt, under which was a bulletproof vest. He felt that his body was getting heavy, and it was getting harder and harder to keep a calm expression on his face. Just from walking, it seemed to the boy that knives were being driven into him. Such a feeling was already familiar to him. It used to be like that. Then the young man was beaten by Regina. Taeha was getting dressed and in the meantime asked Gray how about finding that person he talked about earlier. The interlocutor behind the laptop said that he knew. It was about Kim Pil-jun, a representative of the company Night Moves. He was a broker who helped our hero cross illegally into Korea. This guy worked in Europe and came to Korea a few years ago and quickly became famous. Acquaintances said that he was looking for a ship with contraband bound for China. Since the death of members of the elite Cheonggu clan, the repression has become more severe. Therefore, even brokers who specialize in escapes cannot leave the country. Taeha liked this information. He ordered Gray to tell those information traders that there was one such vessel and pay them 10 times more. he promised to return all the money. The partner asked what our hero plans to do when he meets that guy. In response, it was said that he would kill. The reason Tae-ha didn't die back then was because someone told him about his plans. And Kim Pil-jun was the only one who knew that the young man was in Korea. Frowning his eyebrows, the boy said that traitors are killed, even if they are best friends. Meanwhile, the young man whom our hero was going to kill came to the church. He knocked on the door of the confessional and said he had something to tell. It was heard in the silence that everyone was pouring water on their mill. The boy did not feel comfortable in this place, even though he was a Catholic. His interlocutor was sitting in the dark. Only a silhouette was visible. He asked for money, and Kim Pil-jun held out a bag. It contained 100 million Korean won, $100,000. The guy said that it would be profitable to exchange them. However, you can't trust anyone in this country. At this time, he took out his phone. In the earpiece of the secret interlocutor, it sounded that it was getting dangerous. There were people on the street, and at that moment, the door of the church opened and a group of men entered the room. Kim Pil-jun held the phone and continued talking. He was in Korea for only a few years, and he wondered how a mysterious stranger would get hold of a ship that even an escape specialist didn't know about. The confession booth was surrounded. The guy continued to tell how things were going here. There is a rule that a person who cannot be trusted dies. And when the boy said that his interlocutor should follow it, Tae-ha said that he had lost his mind. After all, he did not recognize his friend's voice at all. Kim Pil-jun's voice trembled. He repeated that the young man was supposed to be dead. Drops of sweat began to glisten on his forehead. Then he began to obey himself, because he did not guess earlier. Even the Italian proverb as a password did not lead him to this idea. Then the guy said that all this is due to gambling addiction. He lost everything and returned to Korea, but he could not get rid of the habit. He fell into a game set up by Chong and ended up hundreds of millions in debt. Then he told when Tae-ha will come to Korea. The guy quietly took out his gun and said that if he had known that they wanted to kill his friend, he might have kept quiet. And then he remembered the story in Naples. But this did not settle our hero. The very next moment, a knife went through the throat of the traitor, who was pointing a gun at the interlocutor. The men near the door, hearing strange sounds inside the confessional, began to get nervous. Gray was sitting in the car with a laptop. He warned that getting involved in a fight is dangerous for our hero, because he already has broken ribs and an arm as well as a bullet hole. Tae-ha came out of the confessional and addressed the men, saying that if they were already working with Kim Pil-jun, he should have told them not to bring guns into the church. Silence should be kept in the temple, especially at night. He then said that they should pray before attacking. After all, angels will meet them soon. Our hero remarked that he didn't care if these people were subordinates of Kim Pil-jun or if he found them somewhere on the street. To use knives and beat against one. The young man assumed that they had come here to kill him. He slowly took out his knife and warned that he couldn't just let them go now. This monologue only irritated self-confident men. They rushed at Tae-ha to kill and take the money. Gray watched this and was shocked. Not only did this guy have his arm broken, but his ribs were also broken by a bullet. He had no idea how it was possible to get into a fight in such a state. But it turned out that one hand was more than enough for Tae-ha. He killed his attackers quickly and skillfully. One by one, they fell from the precise blows of the sharp blade. Our hero thought that if he scattered these bandits like this immediately, something unforeseen would definitely happen. They will not leave just like that, because there was a lot of money right under their noses. Therefore, the adrenaline in the blood was doing its job. Therefore, among these men, there must have been at least one who brought here what their brothers forbade. And indeed, a shot rang out in the room. Tae-ha considered his next course of action. If he decides to use his legs, he will only have one chance. Having planned everything, He was next to the shooter in a moment and solved him with several precise movements. The gun fell to the floor of the church well beyond the body of its owner. This shocked both the attackers and Gray, who watched it from the car. The guy straightened up, looked around the blinded opponents, and asked who would be next. His carmate couldn't understand what he had just seen. How can a person with such wounds do such a thing? Our main character got in touch and told Gray to take the bag from the confessional because he couldn't move himself right now. And although the boy tried to pretend that he was not watching his friend, he knew that he was somewhere nearby, because before that, he warned about the danger. When the partner entered the temple, he saw the floor covered with corpses, and everything around was splattered with blood. Our hero was sitting on a bench, barely bowing his head. He told Gray to go ahead. After collecting the bag, the young man felt that he was losing control of what he saw. He covered his mouth with his hand to hold back. Then he sat down next to Tae-ha and said that an acquaintance would come soon. You only have to wait 10 minutes. Then he saw how bad the boy looked. He was burning all over. Gray picked up the phone to ask his aunt to bring some medicine. But at this moment, our hero went through the hand of his recent savior several times with a knife. Tae-ha began to say that when he regained consciousness, he saw that everything had been replaced. His clothes, his phone, but the gloves were still on him. At that moment, the boy took them off and put them on the bench next to him. Revealing the seal of the Salerno family, the boy asked if his partner knew who he was. Gray was scared and shocked, but he said that the young man is the eldest son of the late Jin Soo-hyuk, who was the third son of Jin Seok-ho, the chairman of the Cheonggu Group. He is Jin Tai-ha, the killer known as Vendetta, an Asian man in his 20s or 30s from the Salerno family. He is wanted by TOXRP and offers a reward of 5.5 billion won. Gray said, because he wasn't going to tell anyone about it. His aunt doesn't know anything. He only wanted our boy to fulfill his request. Tae-ha asked if the request was so important that the young man ignored the danger to his life and the good reward. The answer was yes, without hesitation. The boy said that he had no idea how long he and his aunt had to hide from Chong. But our hero made him shut up. Putting the gloves back on, he replied that it was not a rational reason. In this case, it is better to immediately hand it over to them. The reason Gray can't be an information wholesaler, even with all the equipment he needs. The reason why he left like that, although wholesalers do not do this, it is also because he needs experience. Wholesalers are often elderly people. So Tai-ha suggested playing it big. Two men were walking down the corridor of the hotel. One told the other that when they found it, he should do nothing but ask questions. He promised to cope with everything on his own. The second agreed, promising that he would not spoil the reputation of Osun. In the hallway, a bespectacled man said that their representatives always keep their word. Then they went into the room and apologized for making them wait. Shortly before that, a conversation took place in the church. Tae-ha then told Gray that he is a good information trader. Despite his young age, he metics and reacts well. The hero also promised to fulfill his request, but if the guy still wants to work with him, he will have to risk his life. Although the work will still be the same, trading of information. If he is ready, the young man can become one of the best traders in the world, and all because our hero was going to kill his friend. Waiting for the two men in the hotel room was none other than Jin Jong-man, and his two bodyguards stood behind him. The man said that he did not expect such a quick meeting. He sympathetically remarked that it must have been difficult after Jin Jong's funeral, so he could come to his senses and only then get in touch. The guest gestured that it was time for the talkative and nervous man in glasses to shut up. There was music playing in the room, which Jong listened to enthusiastically. He was conducting in time, so he didn't want to be disturbed to enjoy himself. When the piece ended, the boy began to clap. The man in glasses took the initiative. He added that it would be great to hear the composition from the beginning. Jin asked if he knew it was a work of art. He was sprawled out on the couch and smiling smugly. The interlocutor replied that it was Schubert's Forest King in Liszt's interpretation. It sounded a bit clumsy, so he assumed the young man himself was playing it. As Moondian turned off the music and took out her earplugs, the boy explained that he played it in a contest in 6th grade and won first place. But afterwards his wrist hurt, so he stopped playing. All the family members who watched this performance then now contemplate it only from heaven. The boy continued that if he had known earlier that everything would turn out like this, he would not have been so careless. Jung Hui-min was holding an electronic cigarette next to the man in glasses. He said that it was worth cancelling the meeting because the client was not at all like the usual one. However, no one took this into account. At this moment, Jin Jung clenched his fist. This gesture was sharp and gave away the boy's calm demeanor. Pointing his fingers in the direction of the impudent interlocutor, he ordered to choke on the cigarette. Then he added that this should have been taught by parents while raising a child. The young man opposite began to get angry, and the story continued. The Chung family has the #1 emergency guide. When something happens, they come together. It cannot be undone. It is the truth since the creation of Chong. That is why they allocated 200 million won for his search. Jin Jong said, trying to handle things as quietly as possible. But instead, he was injured, and now it is difficult for him to walk. The boy pointed to his leg. Beside him stood a stick. That day, the attacker killed all the guards at their headquarters. Then he asked how the stranger managed to survive after meeting such a dangerous killer. Jung Hui-min said he already told. The whole thing is that he was not on the killer's list. Jin Jung was surprised at such a code of honor for a terrorist. A strange rule that did not allow opening fire on one's own. The guy got angry. He broke his cigarette and shouted that the interlocutor should watch his words. There could be no actions that could damage the reputation of his organization or parents. Jung said he was jealous. After all, his relatives will no longer be able to verify anything even with a notary, because they are dead. The guy put the pieces of the electronic device on the table and asked who dealt with this killer after all. The answer was that it was Baek Jun-soo, a gray-haired guard standing behind the boy. The bespectacled man turned to the aforementioned head of security and asked if that was true. Baek was the personal bodyguard of the CEO of Chonggu Group. He stood with his hands behind his back and calmly confirmed what was said. The bespectacled man said he understood the gist of the situation. He asked to say what Jin Jung wanted. He replied that he was not interested in compensation, but the guests have to keep quiet about it. First, Jung Hui-min had to deny that he had ever met the attacker. No matter who asks, the answer should be this. The boy didn't understand why Chonggu wanted to hide it. Will they pretend that nothing happened? A man in glasses took out a cigarette and lit it. Leaning back on the sofa, he asked if these were all the conditions. Jin Jung started to get angry. He started to say that he was sure of something. But Baek Jun-soo held his shoulder. The boy turned, not understanding the actions of his bodyguard. But in response, I heard that he assured that everything was fine. Then the bespectacled man apologized for saying too much and offered to light the security chief Baek. But he refused, saying that he was trying to leave. This surprised the guest. Jin Jung tilted his head, understanding that this is how the elders ignore the younger ones. He will become the next president, and how should he deal with the consequences? The man in glasses said that you shouldn't carry nonsense. Sometimes it's better to just shut up. And contemptuously called him a kid. Getting up from the sofa, he added that this is exactly what their president would say. That is why he is here. Then the guests went to the exit. In the end, the senior told Baek Jun-soo's boss that they would continue after making arrangements. And already at the door, he added that next time he should prepare an ashtray earlier, putting a napkin soaked in water in it. In the elevator, Jung Hui-min told his partner that he is an incredible person. He had just really put the pressure on Chong. In response, it was said that this was the purpose of his arrival. Jin Jung still doesn't know the rules of this world. Of course, Chairman Jin Gu-ho couldn't tell them to him, but they themselves are to blame for not dealing with such a traitor earlier. The man added that it was likely that the incident at the villa was set up by Jin Jung himself to become the head of the company. Already in the hall, he told Jung Hui Min that they needed to find the attacker before the others. This phrase shocked the boy. He reminded that the killer is dead, but the man denied. This statement was false. It turns out that Baek Jun-soo, the head of the Cheonggu Group's security service, never kills people. Jin Jung wouldn't hire an actor. Too many of Chief BX's disciples died that night. He just found a person who would turn everything upside down and die. Jung Hui Min said he had a guess. When he saw the attacker, he said that he had come to Korea after many years of absence, then asked if he should offer the boy to work for them. By using it, they would seem to be able to capture Chunga. The man said that this thought was interesting, but this mysterious avenger should just be killed. Jin Jung had most likely hired Jung Hui Min because he was certain that the boy would lose to this unknown. The man, accompanied by his men, went to the car, saying goodbye to the boy, that he should return and take revenge. He added that he hates 5 stars, but cannot watch their people being beaten. It was Kim Jae-pil, vice president of 5 Star, and in the room, Jin Jung was making himself an alcoholic drink. He said there is one thing he learned from his father. The guards stood at the end of the room. The glass table next to the sofa was completely shattered. Probably all the emotions after the meeting poured out on him. The guy said he was good at reading the atmosphere. When Kim Jae-pil asked if Baek Jun-soo killed Tai-ha, there was tension in the air. After taking a sip of his drink, Jin sat down on the couch. He found it strange that the security guard was going to deal with the attacker that night, but jumped into the helicopter. And then the boy's leg ended up in this condition. The head of the security service stood silently, only looking at the owner. Jung added that the killer's body has still not been found. He looked up and asked in a worried tone if Jin Tai-ha was still alive, but it seems that the answer was already obvious. Baek Jun-soo asked if Jin Jung thought he intentionally kept our main character alive. The guard reminded that it was the master who shot the boy that day, and Jin Jung agreed with that. The CEO then clarified that if Baek Jun-soo had killed Tai-ha back then, things wouldn't have gotten this far. The head of the guard admitted that Jin Jung had become much stronger, and he hadn't expected it. He, throwing a glass with a drink, which broke against the wall of the table, got up from the sofa. As he left the room, the managing director informed Jun-soo that it didn't matter much. The most important thing for him at the moment is the board of directors. And, walking to the exit, he emphasized that he must win the vote by a significant margin to get to the committee. However, whether Jin Tai-ha is alive or not, the security chief must not betray Jin Jung. Baek Jun-soo discreetly assured the managing director that he would keep his word to the end. The Trinity climbed to the roof of the building, where a helicopter stood ready on the landing pad. Standing in front of the rotorcraft was Moon Young-min. Jin Jung ironically asked if he was still alive. The guard emotionally protested that the owner had promised him a completely different job, and begged to reconsider the decision to reassign him. He did not agree that as the protector of the main family members, he should be responsible for the security of the ordinary director. Annoyed, Young Min sincerely admitted that under no circumstances would he betray his master. Stepping closer to him, Jin Jung asked with a sly smile, who else could have done it if not him? He recalled that it was thanks to Moon Young-min that everything ended in a personnel reshuffle, and he should be happy that he remained alive. So ignoring him, the trio went to the helicopter. The guard wanted to address his teacher. However, Baek Jun-soo ordered him to leave, and then he added that he would contact him later. Contemplating the situation he found himself in, Moon Young-min kept a close eye on the rotorcraft as it soared into the sky. Meanwhile, the events take place in Seo Yeon-suk's aunt's restaurant, which is located in the 3rd quarter of a Changzhou district. Shoving his breakfast in both cheeks, Jin Tae-ha learned that Gray's father was a senior scientist at Chonggu Electronics, and it was through this that the boy learned who our hero was. Gray admitted to looking at the tattoo on his palm, the 20-year-old Asian man, the Tox RP case of the Chung family murder, and the photo in the Chung profile folder left by his father. So the boy concluded that all the events took place exactly 17 years ago. Gray asked the interlocutor if he did well, and he agreed. The aunt grumbled unhappily that her nephew couldn't seem to find another job. Giving painkillers to our hero, she specified that he should be well prepared, since he was abandoned by the royal family and came for revenge after so many years. Taeha asked if these people were planning to betray him if they got the chance in the future. He noted with sadness that traitors are being killed. But Gray, who almost choked on his food at those words, quickly denied this idea. Taeha said he couldn't know for sure, and he agreed that a person who lived like a killer mobster could not so easily begin to trust outsiders. As he continued to eat, Vendetta announced that he was not one of those who could postpone an urgent matter under force majeure. The boy then kindly added that people who hate the Chong family and the 5 stars can't be bad in his opinion. Our hero continued his meal with an appetite, leaving his hosts to ponder what he had heard. The hosts concluded that in case of betrayal, they would deal with the enemies on their own. A trio from the Yaburi group entered the restaurant. They complained about the hot weather. The leader ordered to turn on the air conditioner, because otherwise all the visitors of the restaurant will disperse, and then the hostess will have nothing to pay the interest on the debt. The aunt angrily emphasized that she had paid off all the overdue debts, so she does not understand why the gang comes to her again and creates problems. But Cho Bok-soo denied it, saying that they just came to have breakfast. Seo Yeon-suk then ordered Gray to go to school. Suddenly, the leader of Yaburi saw our main character and said that this is the first time he has seen this guy. Bok-soo asked why he was eating at this place. Ignoring the appeal to him, Jin Tae-ha carefully examined the piece of pickled radish and simply wondered if the vegetable really had to be that big. The leader asked in surprise if the boy was deaf, stupid, or thought he was too cool. Gray announced that he was going to school. As he walked to the exit, he looked around and remembered his recent conversation with Tae-ha. Then, in his room, he told the interlocutor that he would never kill anyone, because there was no need to fight among themselves in their area. Tae-ha asked him if he was really like the kind of person who attacks others without warning, to which Gray countered that, of course, it wasn't. So our main character decided to find out what exactly the boy wants. And he told him. First, Gray recalled that last time he told about the 3rd quarter of Changzhou district, which is a truce zone between Cheonggu and the 5 stars due to renovations. There was a time when the county was in chaos due to war between them, but thanks to the local Yaburi group, the fighting stopped and a truce was signed. Tae-ha asked in surprise how it was possible for a local gang to stop the 2 powerful forces of Chong and the 5 stars. Gray replied that this was absolutely true, and that the 3rd quarter was now a conditional safe zone. The young man added that the Yaburi group wants to buy all the buildings in the Changzhou area. The plan is to set up a housing cooperative, because they think there will be an opportunity to negotiate when Chong, or 5-star, meet with the developers in the future. While considering this information, Tae-ha noted that Gray had other thoughts on the matter. The guy replied that, of course, the problem could be solved by uniting and everyone would have done it a long time ago. But the mayor, who could agree to the creation of such a union, was elected with the help of 5 stars. Seo Yeon-suk appealed to the mayor several times, but he didn't want to hear anything, so everyone is powerless. So Gray's request is for Jin Tae-ha to convince the authorities. Aunt Gray sternly warned the Yaburi leader not to use physical violence. Putting his wand aside, Tae-ha pondered that a regular street gang had forced Chong and the 5 stars to back down from their feud. Our hero stood up and bowed to his aunt, thanking him for the delicious breakfast. Choe Bok-soo decided to follow Tae-ha, but his aunt stopped him. She asked not to pick on her clients and reminded that she had paid all the interest. Instead, the Yaburi leader appears before her eyes every day. Cho Bok-soo swung his hand to hit her, but was swiftly countered by our hero. In a moment, Gray, who had already managed to leave the restaurant, heard a loud noise behind him. Looking back, he saw the Yaburi trio fly out the door straight to the street, while Taiha calmly stepped outside. The student was very angry because he ordered our hero not to start fights. Surprised and frightened, Boksu asked the assailant who he was and how he dared to touch the leader of the group. Our hero pondered over the fact that he had a grand revenge plan. Unfortunately, he didn't consider the fact that his real enemy was Jin Jongman. It was because of this that he failed. However, Taeha could easily foresee the enemy's plans for the future. After all, no matter what blood ties a candidate for the post of chairman has, he must be elected by the board of directors. Our hero assumed that he would be able to destroy the board of directors with the help of the Changzhou District Renovation Project. On the opposite side of the street stood a girl who turned to Taeha and asked who he was. She added, "Does the boy single-handedly want to start a war between the two clans?" It was Yun Su-ri, the deputy leader of Yaburi. Taking out a cigarette and lighting it, Taeha replied that he wasn't going to do that. He only plans a conversation. The girl did not believe that he came only to talk. She asked who the boy thought he was, and what he was talking about with her people behind his back. Our hero good-naturedly apologized, since those men did not want to listen to him, and he communicates only with those who are of the same mind as him. Jin Taeha pondered that the small Yaburi organization had forced Chong and the 5 Stars to retreat. Suddenly, he noticed armed men hiding in different buildings. The boy thought that if they were scattered all over the city, it could only mean that the third quarter of a Changzhou district had become the main stronghold of their armed unit. If there was even one spy among them, their intelligence would definitely be broken. But it seemed that the effect of the discipline system was showing at the moment. The girl asked who the boy was, a swindler from the Chong family, or a sycophant from 5 Stars. Our hero was just about to introduce himself, when at the same moment a bullet fell at his feet. Unsuri told the boy to answer without moving, or he would be shot. Taeha's face contorted with rage and his hand clenched into a fist. He knew that this day would surely come. Approaching the girl under a hail of bullets, he did not want to believe that something so disgusting was actually happening. Snipers on the building tried to warn the boss about the danger and were waiting for her command to kill the enemy. Suru turned around and called out her assistant's name. Li Hua-riang, nicknamed Tank, jumped off the roof. He stood in front of Taeha, but our protagonist menacingly ordered him to step aside. He gave in. Stunned by the unexpected betrayal, the girl stood in fear. Surprised fighters waited for her order. Our hero approached her and snatched the glass from her hand. Throwing away the glass, he said that it was precisely because the girl was drinking such a bad drink that she couldn't do anything. The deputy leader was stunned by such unusual behavior of an unfamiliar boy. Then Taeha carefully leaned towards her and, looking around, whispered something in her ear. After that, he turned and left, saying that it was not even worth talking to them. The girl stood and looked at the boy in surprise. The fighters wanted to stop the insolence and were waiting for an order from the boss. Instead, Suri approached Tank. He informed her that Taeha had no ill intentions. The girl asked if that was why he allowed the boy to approach her. This meant that things in the organization were going quite well. Li Hua-riang noted with a slight smile that the boss felt the same as he did. He then added, looking at Taeha's back, that no one had seen the real one since the war. In the evening, Gray and our hero repaired a broken door together at Seo Yeon-suk's restaurant. When they had finished, the aunt asked if they were sure they had fixed everything. Gray answered in the affirmative and asked to feed them. Yeon-suk, threatening Taeha, warned that in case of another prank, she will throw him out of the restaurant. The guy promised to be more careful, but at that moment, a girl with pink hair burst into the room and ordered Taeha to come to her. She was stunned for a moment, not understanding why the door fell down. Suri accompanied Tank. The girl rushed to Yeon-suk with a hug, calling her sister, and said that she missed her very much. Taeha noticed that the girl's behavior was very different from the morning. He began to wonder what she was really like. While fixing the fallen door, Suri confessed to her aunt that she broke the finger of Chu Bok-soo, who dared to touch her sister's face. Seo Yeon-suk ordered to leave the door and go eat because she thought the girl was too thin. Gray explained to Tae-ha that during the war, Auntie treated many members of the Yaburi group. She even treated the former leader, who was Suri's father, several times free of charge. That's why this little girl considers her aunt a benefactor. Tae-ha pointed out that subordinates have unacceptable behavior towards a person their boss considers a benefactor. He called the girl not the second number in the group, but only a puppet, at which she was very offended. Suri flipped over Tae-ha's head while wrapping a thin wire around his neck. Stopping on the table, the girl explained that she was actually very grateful this morning, showing sympathy for him. Cunningly threatening to pull the trigger, she asked the boy to repeat what he had said earlier. Our hero noticed about himself that he was not wrapped in an ordinary rope. The thread has a different strength. However, Tae-ha mentioned out loud that some of the people who were in the building during their morning meeting had their sights set on them. Not our hero. And Suri herself definitely guesses this. The guy added that formally, everyone observes the terms of the truce, but still her people are being manipulated. Tai-ha asked if it could be someone from the middle of the group. In the morning, whispering in her ear, our hero arranged for the girl to meet at her aunt's restaurant at 21, as he believed that there were many spies around them at the moment. Jin Tae-ha continued his questioning and wondered who it could be. Is there a force that ordered them to buy all the houses, someone from 5-star or Chong? At the last words, Yun-soo-ri pulled hard on the string, wanting to strangle the boy. However, in a moment, she looked in surprise at the interlocutor, who took out his dagger and cut the wire with ease, smiling at the girl. At this time, in one house, a naked man desperately begged for forgiveness and begged the owner to save him, banging his fists on the glass door. He admitted that he had failed the Lebanese contract. But if he was given just 1 month, the man promised to earn twice the lost amount. The owner ignored his pleas and talked on his mobile phone. His interlocutor reported that a stranger had broken into the 3rd block of Changzhou district and was approaching Yun-soo-ri, and the boy noticed the presence of spies. The interlocutor wanted to receive instructions on the following actions. At that time, the cage opened and a huge, angry, hungry lion came out. The naked man hysterically begged for mercy and to give him another chance. Tears rolled down his face like hail. The request was ignored, and the lion tore its victim to pieces. Meanwhile, the owner of the house was looking at the scent photo with Jin Tae-ha on his phone. It was Hong In-gyu, a member of the board of directors of Chung Electronics, from the Jinjong faction. He was interested in this situation and ordered to bring the boy alive. Yun-soo-ri asked the guy if he was aiming for the 3rd block of Jiangsu district. He confirmed that he is interested in Jonggu Group. Tai-ha then asked the girl why she didn't catch the spies that Jong had sent that she knew about, and if it was really because she was threatened. The girl looked at the boy with surprise. She tried to understand who he was. Suri was worried that the interlocutor calmly cut the thread that was her secret weapon made of Kevlar fiber. She angrily asked who he was. Tai-ha replied that in this country, he is the best at killing people from Zhong. The girl stared at him dumbfounded. The guy calmly continued. If the problem is with them, then he will be able to help her. Unsuri looked back at her aunt, and she confirmed that our hero was telling the truth. Seo Yeon-suk added that everything is fine, and this guy can solve her problems. Suddenly, the girl jumped off the table and quickly headed for the exit, where Tank was waiting for her. Suri said that it was all nonsense, because if killing a few people could solve her questions, she would have used it long ago. She then looked around and told Tai-ha to stop behaving like that, and he better get out of this town altogether. Suri left, slamming the door, and those present watched the girl in silence. Later, Tai-ha and his aunt were smoking cigarettes at the entrance to the restaurant. The guy thanked Seo Yeon-suk for sticking up for him when he mentioned during the conversation that if it's about Jong, he can be trusted. The aunt rhetorically asked if it was not true, and then she added, who else in all of Korea can get close to that family? Tae-ha replied that of course it had to be the person secretly scheming inside. Yeon-suk then named Hong In-gyu, the CEO of Honggu Electronics, who is the main culprit behind these events. The former leader of the Yaburi gang, Suri's father, almost died in the renovation war. However, In-gyu took the boss to the hospital, saving him. He is currently using the girl in his interests. Only Suri and Yeon-suk know about this. Other residents of the area think that the leader has died. If the residents had found out that he was alive, a confrontation would certainly have begun, and everyone would have died. The aunt asked if Tae-ha could solve this problem so that Suri's father wouldn't die, if at all possible. At that moment, they were being watched from the roof of the building opposite. The spy was asked if he could confirm the conversation. The agent with the call sign B1 confirmed over the radio that the aunt asked her husband for help. He was a fighter of the private military company Peak. He said that it is very difficult to read Tae-ha's lips, so it is impossible to confirm his words. The walkie-talkie was asked if the boy was a mercenary like them if Yeon-suk asked him for help. However, the scout did not know this. He simply had an order to capture our hero alive. The observer asked about his actions regarding the woman and the student in the restaurant. He received an answer that they did not need these people. The spy wanted to clarify whether it was necessary to kill them, but at that moment, the fighter noticed Tae-ha behind him and was very surprised how he was able to be near him so quickly. A fight broke out between them. Vendetta plunged his knife into the hand of the spy, who was holding the gun. The person on the walkie-talkie heard strange noises and asked what had happened to the agent. However, he did not have time to answer anything, because at this time, Tae-ha directed his dagger straight into the opponent's heart. Then our hero grabbed the walkie-talkie. Calling himself B1, he said that everything was fine. He had taken care of everything and would arrive shortly. The next day at Cheonggu Severance Hospital, the CEO and Suri were talking in the patient's ward. Hong In-gyu willingly ate the sick man's breakfast, interrogating the girl. He reminded her that he had ordered the signing of the contracts to be completed yesterday. The girl protested because she had to sign them without any objections, so that no problems would arise later. The director emphasized to her that he does not treat useless people as ordinary people. They are like a piece of meat for him. With these words, he hit the patient's leg with a fork. This act amused him, and Hong laughed happily. A frightened Yun-soo-ri screamed. However, the principal continued to abuse her father. In-gyu sneered that the medical equipment started beeping, so she was fighting for the patient's life. The girl begged to stop the bullying and promised to do her job and what she was ordered to do. Walking up to her and grabbing her face, the headmaster told her to do what she was asked to do earlier. Gritting her teeth, Suri glared at her enemy. Tears were pouring down her cheeks. Wiping the bloodstains from his face, the headmaster said that he always liked to read the impudence in her eyes, because it made him want to conquer the girl. In-gyu threw a photo of Jin Tae-ha at her feet and, saying that he was interested in this boy, ordered to bring him today. Leaving the ward, he emphasized that the girl could lose a lot if she decided to betray him. Entering the elevator, he pressed the phone number, but the voice of the answering machine said that the caller was outside the network area. This angered the director, and he cursed at his subordinates, who turned out to be as useless as insects. Suddenly, he noticed behind him a strange guy in a mask who recklessly dared to ride with him in the same elevator. In a moment, he approached the director and cut off his left ear with a sharp knife blade. The man cried out in unbearable pain. Stepping on the cut piece, Tae-ha said he heard the director looking for him. Cursing, the director yelled at the boy for daring to touch him. With these words, an angry Hong In-gyu swung his fist at our protagonist. During a recent conversation with our hero, Seo Yeon-suk told him that during the renovation war in Jangso district, the Jeonggu group used mercenaries to do things by other people's hands. Hoas! Peak PMC consists of extremely evil bastards who are ready to do anything for the sake of money. Remembering this conversation, Tae-ha asked In-gyu if he thinks that money can solve everything. Holding a bunch of tokens of destroyed fighters in his hand, Our hero emphasized that the one who is going to shed other people's blood should be prepared that it can also be done to him. The boy forcefully shoved a handful of badges into his opponent's mouth, although he tried to resist. Tae-ha then announced that from now on he would visit the principal every day wherever he was, and warned him to always be on the alert. Terrified to death and very angry, Hong In-gyu cursed and tried to run away from his opponent. But he was knocked down. Desperate and filled with fear, the principal roared and begged Tae-ha to stop the bullying. Skillfully using a dagger, our hero emphasized that there are enough muscles on his thighs not to feel serious damage from his knife, unlike the places the boy had hit before, which is a pretty noble act on Vendetta's part. Shaking the blood from his knife, Tae-ha reminded Hong In-gyu about the meeting tomorrow. The day after these events, Jin-jung informed the audience that 7 of the 15 board members were on his side. 6 took the side of the deputy head, and only 2 still remain neutral. He emphasized that, as a result, the board of directors cannot meet together at the moment. One of those present noted that the former chairman of Chong would be very upset if he found out about this. Jin-jung said that those who hold neutrality do not understand their language. Thus, there is no other way but to explain everything to the 2 of them through the achievements of a young team that achieves more than the vice president. Jin-jung then asked Hong In-gyu, since the reconstruction project in the Changzhou area is progressing quite well, should we expect good news before the management meeting? The managing director politely confirmed that this is exactly what should happen. With a big smile, Jung asked him to speak informally as they had become close since they were the heads of their departments. He then asked why In-gyu was so nervous since it was just a meeting and not a council meeting, adding with a sly smile, was he feeling awkward? The managing director agreed with this and apologized. Inconspicuously, he grabbed his injured leg, which was excruciatingly painful. As In-gyu got into his car, he winced at the searing pain from the injuries he had received the day before. He also remembered Tae-ha's words that there is a lot of muscle on the thighs, so the damage will be minimal. He removed the false ear, accompanying the movements with insulting curses in the direction of his opponent. Suddenly, the driver asked if he could go to his house first, which threw his owner off balance. In-gyu kicked the driver furiously and angrily asked why they had to go there. Tae-ha turned to him from the front passenger seat and said why the director was shouting like that, because the driver only asked him. Frightened, Hong In-gyu recoiled and screamed as it hit his car. Instead, Vendetta, taking out his dagger, reported that the headmaster's leg was ill-mannered. Our main character hit the interlocutor with a knife with all his might, causing him to cry out loudly in pain. After that, Jin Tae-ha got out of the car and promised to meet again tomorrow. Catching up with In-gyu, he demanded an answer to the question of why he is behaving like that with him and what he needs in general. In the evening in the abandoned building, Tae-ha reflected on the fact that he stabbed Hong In-gyu in various vital places for 7 days. Smoking a cigarette, the boy concluded that the managing director had reached his limit. Vendetta then informed the audience that even if they handed him over to In-gyu at this point, there would be no way for them to escape. The fighters raised a barrage. They raged, not understanding how they could drive away the enemies. The angry gang members tried to talk Suri into giving the order to kill Jin Tae-ha. They believed that if they did not hand over the boy now, a new war would begin. The deputy leader of Yaburi asked why the fighters came to them and told about all this. She was interrupted by Tae-ha. Shaking off the ashes from the kindling, he explained that when registering a financial certificate, which is necessary for economic activity, an unknown error 307 appears. It makes internet banking completely inaccessible. Rumor has it that people or journalists who go against Chong suffer from this error quite often. Most of the residents of the 3rd quarter of the Changzhou district suffered not only because of this error 307, but also because of the low speed of the internet. In addition, there was a leak of personal information. Looking through the crowd, our hero asked why the mercenaries were behaving so stupidly. These words caused a wave of indignation. The militants asked, disgruntled, what this stranger knew. Tae-ha said that he knows about how the Jungs resort to tricks to get rid of the fighters who use their families as a fallout. Then Vendetta, our hero, turned to one of them and remarked that if he wanted to protect his family, then he should not just endure, but fight back with the same weapon that was currently in his hands. Unsuri thought deeply about what she heard. Our main character continued his speech. As Ingyu tries to handle everything on his own because he can't interfere with the work of the board of directors, Tai will take responsibility by taking care of him. Others should be ready. Li Huariang asked what our main character would get in return from this situation. Our main character happily replied that if he succeeds, he will get the position of Director Chong. Late at night, there was a meeting at Hong In-gyu's house. Taking a bite of a piece of freshly served steak, the owner's interlocutor said that the situation is tragic for both sides. It was Go In-sik, the head of PEC Peak. He sympathized with the director who was humiliated by an outsider. In-gyu exclaimed indignantly, "Does his interlocutor think he likes doing this business because it's all through the board of directors?" Sik suggested that we proceed to a frank conversation, but the director said that the management meeting is called the board of directors meeting, but it is no different from the reorganization of the entire Cheonggu group. He added that he has been friends with Jin Gu-ho's eldest son for a long time and thinks his actions are brilliant. If Jin Jongman does become the head of Jong, it will be like the appearance of a god for the faint of heart. The director warned the PMC leader that he must do everything right. Otherwise, if the plan with the rescheduling fails, it will also affect him through the connection with Ingyu. In-sik admitted that the boy also cheated on them. He asked the interlocutor if he knew the Salerno family from Italy, but he said he did not know anything. The leader of Peak found out that in that family, a foreigner was the main executioner, named Vendetta, a real monster whose real name no one knew. It is only known that the boy was Asian. In-sik slyly hinted that given Hong's position, he must have a lot of money, and he asked how much was needed. The PMK leader said that if the enemy has a nuclear warhead, he needs to prepare the same one. That is why Go In-sik invited our protagonist's competitor to Korea, and he has already arrived. The man's name is Oswan Jerome, and he's rumored to have survived 2 encounters with Vendetta. Hong In-gyu was displeased, as he felt that it was necessary to find someone that our hero would fear. In-sik reported that Vendetta is famous for pursuing traitors to the end wherever he is. Rumor has it that one of the enemies is hiding in the Amazon Valley in Colombia. Our hero chased him for a whole month while eating only insects. It is hard to believe, because not every explorer can go into the jungle, but instead the young man returned with the traitor's head in his hand. Hong In-gyu then asked if this Jerome was putting himself at risk of death, but the interlocutor replied that he was not, as he had come to Korea as soon as he heard the name Vendetta. Sik announced that the commission fee was $700,000 in advance, $300,000 as a balance, another $300,000 went to pay the broker. Also, a lot of money was spent to establish a connection with the guy. In-gyu nervously smoked a cigarette. Then he asked the interlocutor how many people were left, to which the PMK chairman replied, if he wants them to unite, then the amount will double. The director immediately called his assistant and ordered 200 kilograms to be sent immediately to the first underground floor. Go In-sik asked if it would be a good idea to spend $1 million to deal with one person, because Jonggu Group doesn't do that. At that time, the elevator doors opened, and in the opening he noticed a huge pile consisting of bundles of 50,000 won banknotes. In-gyu said that this should be enough until retirement, and for now something else should be discussed. Tae-ha and Gray were looking at the floor plan of a house that the latter had acquired through his connections with the security company that runs the Changzhou area. Our hero asked how In-gyu managed to buy a house, to which the student replied that, with the exception of Cheonggu Security, most subcontractors are sold for money. Gray explained that the company needs to make money. Otherwise, there will always be an outflow of personnel. and it is impossible to achieve the loyalty of subordinates except for money. Our main character thought that his grandfather would be in despair when he found out about such a thing. Gray continued that Hong In-gyu spends most of his time at the headquarters and returns home at 10 o'clock in the evening. Unfortunately, the young man did not have drawings of the underground floor, the presence of which is evidenced by the elevator and stairs. The plan was either lost or In-go himself did not provide it. There is only the mark B1GRC, which means the type of building material, cement GRC. Gray told what he learned about him. Cement is resistant to the effects of moisture, chemicals, or weather conditions, and is also quite elastic. So it is used to create soundproof walls, landscape structures, and zoos. Jin Tai-ha asked to do something else, whispering a request in his ear, which made the boy quite surprised. Soon, our hero picked up his jacket and prepared to leave, explaining that he needed to do something. Gray was surprised at this suddenness. The surprised student asked why he wouldn't use this thing he had at home, even though he didn't think Vendetta was one to use something like that. Tae-ha explained that there was no such thing as those people, and ordered to keep an eye on the CCTV cameras. Maybe outsiders would appear on them. When our hero left the building, he was approached by Tank. He asked if he was going to provoke Hong In-gyu again. Vendetta explained that when a person gets stabbed every 24 hours, it doesn't sound like a provocation, and the director is almost on the edge. Lee Hwa-ryong said that he has been working in this area since the Great Revolution of 1990 and knows many important people from above. However, he had never heard of Tae-ha, so Tank directly asked the boy who he was. To this, our hero said, "If the interlocutor finds out who he is, what significance will it have for him?" Tank warned that without a clear explanation, he would consider the boy a hindrance to his boss's work and remove him. Tae-ha thought for a moment and said that he does not catch opponents by surprise and fights fair. He then asked if Tank was a member of the 5-star group, but he didn't say anything because he was too surprised. Vendetta then said that he trusts Hwa-ryong's skills, so he calmly walks past him. He told 5-star to take responsibility and pay for the redesign about 10 times over. Tae-ha came to Hong In-gyu's house and neutralized the guard. After that, he went into the middle of the building. Passing empty rooms one after another, he decided that the director had not yet returned home. Then he saw an elevator that could take him to the underground floor, so the boy decided to go down there to look around. Suddenly, the lift door closed behind him and a greeting from Hong In-gyu rang out over the loudspeakers. While in his car, he said that he guessed the arrival of a guest. He wondered why he continued to follow him. The principal discovered that Tae-ha had stolen his schedule. After letting the 2 lions out of the cage, In-gyu told our hero that even if he is good with swords, can he defeat the beasts? He then explained that due to the deal with 5-star, he couldn't touch the 3rd quarter of Changzhou district. But thanks to Tai-ha, he had an excuse to destroy the district, so he was grateful to the boy for that. He triumphantly noted that while our hero will be eaten by lions, it is at this time that armed men will tear his friends to pieces. In-gyu added that tonight, Tai-ha and all the beggars from Changzhou will be removed like trash. After these words, he ordered the lions to eat their prey, and the animals rushed at the man. Pulling out his gun and shooting at the beasts, Vendetta asked why the director called the lions by female names. In-gyu was surprised to hear the sound of the shot, as he thought Tai-ha only used knives. Our hero replied that it is impossible to work with one tool both with people and with animals, so bullets are also used. While cutting the bandage on his arm, Tae-ha calls Gray and informs him that his area will be attacked soon, so Suri needs to be alerted so that everyone is on the alert. Stunned by what had happened, In-gyu remembered the story of Vendetta, who had returned from the jungle with the head of an enemy, and was filled with unspeakable fear. Gray, our hero, said that while they will defend themselves, he himself will go after Hong's soul. The horrified director broke into a sweat. The student relayed a message to Suri and Tank that the PEC peak were advancing towards them, then added that Tae-ha himself is going to catch In-gyu, so the third quarter needs to hold out until he returns. Clenching his hand into a fist, Hua Rayong said that they had no right to lose this battle. Gray appealed to those present to fight back. Otherwise, they would all be killed. The fighters approached Su Ri with the suspicion that Taiha caused trouble and then simply ran away, and there was no way to expect him to return. The student began to stand up for our hero, but one of the gang members interrupted him. The man reminded that the last war was quite brutal, and some children of the same age as Gray died in it. Yeon-suk's aunt tried to stop the argument by assuring that Taiha would definitely come, and she would make sure of it herself. But an advisor to the Yaburi group, a former army battalion commander and retired major general, questioned her words. Kim Suon asked Su-ri what she was going to do. The girl stood silently, but she was determined. Yoon said that she did not see the last war, because when she returned, it was already over. Su-ri admitted that she was scared and did not want to lose her father. Because of this, Junggu Group used her. The fighters listened to her story with amazement. The girl continued and apologized for fooling everyone, but she wasn't going to let it happen anymore. The second leader of the Yaburi group proclaimed that this time they would drive Chang'e out of their territory. The general director of PEC Peak informed his subordinates that he had an order to destroy the inhabitants of the third quarter of Changzhou district. He said that if there are no proposals that need to be agreed with the Union of Residents, then the more the company builds and sells luxury apartments, the greater their profit will be. Previously, due to the truce with the 5 stars, the use of force was impossible. But if Vendetta and his pursuer started a fight, it could set the stage for them to intervene in the battle. The fighters assumed that these two were just decoys. The leader agreed and added that Hong In-gyu is rather short-sighted. The leader reminded that it is necessary to get out of here as soon as possible before the 5 stars come here, because Vendetta and his rival will turn everything here upside down. Aswan Jerome looked down on the city from the roof of the building. He was eating ice cream and pondering the fact that the situation seemed familiar to him. He predicted war, and as if addressing Vendetta, declared Korea an interesting country. Meanwhile, Go In-sik radioed the order to release the drones. One by one, drones began to climb into the sky from the parking lot. The PMK leader recalled that during the last battle over the 5 stars, everyone fought with only small arms. However, things are different now. Now he had money, so he disregarded all rules. For PMK, the main thing was to win over anyone. While driving in the car, a frightened Hong In-gyu called In-sik to assure him of the reliability of his bodyguards. He reassured him, informing him that 2/3 of his mercenaries were with the director. The head of the PMC assured that even the president of the country is protected worse. However, this did not completely reassure In-gyu. He ordered to look around because he was in danger of being harassed by Tai Ha. Indeed, at that time, the boy was not far away. He drove for GPS sensors that worked well in every car. Our main character was worried about Gray, so he tried to fix everything as soon as possible. It wasn't long before the principal's bodyguards spotted Tai Ha. They were surprised that he learned the direction of their movement. The mercenary leaned out the window of the car with a machine gun and started shooting at Vendetta's car. Our hero dodged the bullets that passed through the windshield, but kept control, and the car caught up with the enemy. The fighters radioed that Tai Ha is approaching, so you should not lose your vigilance and let him catch his breath. From the windows of the bus, a bunch of fighters aimed machine guns at the car in which our hero was driving. Tai Ha slammed on the brakes, and the car he had just been in flipped onto the curb. The boy himself, falling out of it and trying to cover himself from the hail of bullets, ended up on the torn-off door. Looking back, Vendetta noticed guards on motorcycles approaching him. Our hero reacted quickly and, having dealt several blows to one of the fighters, took away his bike. Leaving the motorcyclists behind, Tai Ha hit the gas and made a sharp maneuver. The air was full of adrenaline and tension. The mercenaries watched everything from the window of the bus and shouted to each other to shoot. Our hero, skillfully dodging bullets, quickly caught up with a truck traveling in the same direction. After performing a trick and flying over the truck, He pushed off the motorcycle and ended up on the roof of the car. The bike stopped at the curb. The driver and the passenger of the car realized with horror the danger of the situation in which they found themselves. Recovering his breath and taking out his knives, our main character invited his enemies to dance. The driver of the bus driving behind the car Tai Ha was standing on noticed that he did not have a weapon. The mercenaries decided that if they ran over the boy, our hero would jump to the side and turn into minced meat. Vendetta understood their plan and pushed back from the car, which the fighters did not expect. The guy broke through the windshield and ended up in the bus cabin. Tai Ha mercilessly destroyed his enemies. In a moment, everything inside was red with bloodstains, and not a single passenger was left alive. Then our hero broke the windshield again and moved to the truck that was driving nearby. The stunned driver asked what was happening, because he had seen the motorcycle just fly away. Bribing, Tae-ha politely asked the driver to let him drive for a few minutes. Gray and Kim-soo followed the situation on the monitor. They reported that 16 drones were flying, and they were already half a kilometer away. There was a proposal to split up. The drones flew at a low altitude. This indicated that they were of the FPV type. An advisor to the Yabari group, a former army battalion commander, confirmed that their expectations had been met. A few hours before, Soo-ri asked Suwon how he fought in the last war. He said that, in the past, Chunggu and Five Stars fought only at certain times. Clashes took place by agreement, which was not at all similar to medieval Europe. Battles always took place in the third quarter of Changzhou district. If the Five Stars weren't there, that meant Chunggu was also gone. The weapons were only small arms, but they were also used mainly by the peak PVK. It seemed that no one wanted to exaggerate. If something like this monster appeared again, no one would be able to survive this time. Because of this, Go and Sik wants to finish as soon as possible before the Five Stars find out about it. If the mercenaries were to search and catch every Yabari member, hiding in any of the nearby buildings, it could take several days. There is a high probability that PMK fighters will use small kamikaze drones, so everyone should prepare to meet them. Drones flew up, and Yaburi fighters began to shoot them down from the upper floors of buildings. The men used means of radio-electronic warfare and were happy that they managed to neutralize the enemy birds. The leader of the PMC was informed by communication that the drone signal was disabled between 7th and 1st Streets in Changzhou district. It was similar to the operation of EW, or anti-drone weapons. In-sik unhappily asked if someone was jamming the drones. He was told that this was indeed the case, although the signal was interrupted only in certain places. The angry PMK chairman asked how the rivals learned about the drones. He was told that they have an anti-drone radar. The leader became very angry and thought sinisterly that his enemy was going to block the drones in this way. Gray watched the monitor in fear. He noticed that there were several times more drones. Smiling contentedly, In-sik said, "Did the opponents think that he would go to battle with several dozen drones? The direction that can be blocked with the help of anti-drone weapons is quite limited. Outside its range, UAVs fly in their usual mode. Of course, not many birds can be lowered if several hundred of them are scattered in the sky." As a result of the last war, most of the structure of the third quarter of Changzhou district was modeled so that any number of drones could be sent to a specified location through a special program. In-sik was warmed by the thought that during the attack of 800 kamikazes, only a few would be able to survive. Kim Soo-won noted that drones enter through the ventilation holes of houses. This means that the enemy knows the location of the buildings. Over the radio, the advisor relayed that the fighters would not be able to cope with the available weapons, so they should leave their positions. Instead of them, a boss will enter the game. Running up to In-sik, the underling said to look at the top of the houses, and they both gaped in surprise. A bunch of drones flew straight at the girl who was sitting on the roof of the building waiting for them. Soo-ri deftly shot down the drones with her secret thread, and one by one they began to explode above her head. The Peak CEO was stunned. He noted with surprise that he did not know this girl. It was not there during the last war. He was interested in the rope with which Suri deftly competed with the drones. The day before, during a meeting of Yaburi members, the girl demonstrated her own weapon to those present. The deputy admitted that she did not take part in the last war. At this time, she was learning how to use the thread correctly in order to help her father, but unfortunately, she was too late to help. Suri urged everyone to fight so that none of the enemies could appear in their area in the future. Councillor Yaburi noted with sincere joy that Yun Ki-seop's daughter has grown up. The general director of the PMC angrily demanded to send the next squadron of drones. Suddenly, the connection was interrupted, and Go-in-sik realized that something was happening behind his back. The tank received instructions on further actions by phone. He was supposed to arrive at one of the drone control locations and check it out. Looking back, the leader of PMC Peak noticed Li Huarayang running straight at him. Over the phone, the deputy leader of the Yaburi faction and former number 16 in the 5-star hierarchy said that he would deal with Go-in-sik first. 10 years ago, there was a conversation between two men at a cafe table. Kim Soo-on asked the interlocutor if he really wanted to form a new group. He confirmed this and added that times have changed and the question of survival remains open. The best way to protect yourself is to create an organization and bribe the police, rather than constantly looking for patronage. The Major General agreed with this opinion, but reminded him that he was a soldier after all, and that no one but his comrade should use his fists. His interlocutor said that they should unite not for the sake of beating people. It was decided that he would carry a gun to facilitate negotiations. Afterwards, Yun Ki-seop, Suri's father and former leader, happily suggested that the group be named Yaburi. The tank rushed at the enemies. Fighters pointed machine guns at him and were ready to shoot. The CEO of Peku Peak strictly ordered to aim at Hua Ryong's legs, not his head. The tank quickly hit one of the soldiers. The other who stood by was greatly frightened by the force of the enemy. Before he could carry out the boss's order, Hua Ryong quickly neutralized this opponent as well. At the same time, the sniper of the Alpha team confirmed to the management that the tank was taken into the sights. It was at this moment that Suri, who was running on the roof of the house, used her secret weapon and killed the shooter. Having done her job, the girl quickly jumped and moved to another building. This situation began to unsettle the general director of PVC, who noticed the girl's work. The deputy leader reported through the communication of Kim Soo-on that she had taken out another sniper. However, the major general said that there could be many more, so Suri needs to be careful and look around. Since the enemy did not know about the girl in advance, he did not have time to prepare the flight of new drones. Therefore, the snipers are located near the intersection, from where they will have a good view of the area. Obviously, the epicenter of the concentration of shooters will be in the place where all the drones are located. It was at this moment that Gray, who had been constantly monitoring the situation, exclaimed that he had found the right spot. It was a public parking lot opposite the administration of the third quarter. There was a black van. But just as Suri was about to go to the parking lot, a shot rang out. Someone hit Li Huarayang in the arm, and the man looked intently in the direction of the opponent. Go. In-sik came out from a dark part of the street towards Tank. He explained that during the time of Blood and Warriors, as a mercenary, he had survived for 20 years, precisely because of his cunning and villainy. The head of PEC Peak held a rifle in one hand and an axe in the other. Faced with Hua Ryong, he said he would kill him first and the girl next. However, Yun Suri's assistant was determined and threatened to kill In-sik as well. Meanwhile, Taeha stopped the car and pulled Hong In-gyu straight out onto the road. Standing on his knees, the director asked our hero why he was behaving like that with him. The boy replied that he had already told In-gyu that he was going to cut him every day. After that, Taeha stuck his knife into the headmaster's shoulder, and he cried out in excruciating pain. Vendetta said he would take Hong In-gyu back to Jiangzhou district, because if he escapes abroad, it will be quite difficult for our hero to catch him. However, getting up from his knees, the director reminded that it was already too late to go to this part of the city. Everything should be destroyed there by now. And he himself gave the order to kill absolutely everyone, including children and the elderly. Laughing, Ingyu said that more than 10 billion won had been spent on it. He boasted, ordered to destroy everything within an hour without using any bombs or rockets. Taeha hit the headmaster's left eye with the handle of the knife, crushing the lens of his glasses. Vendetta said that many people died in the last war, with Chung and 5-Star fighting. Instead, the director has no idea why our hero is only after him. Taeha said that there is no one scarier than someone who has lost their entire family. Since such a person has nothing left to lose, poison does not flow through his veins. Vendetta asked if Ingyu knew who was stronger than these people, and he replied that these are those who protect their families. Taeha suggested that the headmaster must have seen the patience and steadfastness of those desperate to protect their families, and also the pain from which it seems that the lungs could burst, rage that can tear the heart to pieces, a vigorous effort to restrain oneself with all one's strength. These people are quite strong, and it was Ingyu who made them so. Then Vendetta advised the director to cover the Pelka and follow him. Smiling gloatingly, he asked if Taeha thinks family and rage are stronger than money. Tank defended himself from the axe by substituting his wounded shoulder. The PMK leader said that he did not know about his 16th place in the 5 stars before. Dodging the bullets that the Insik fired at him, Hua Ryong emphasized that it was in the past. The managing director of Peak disagreed with this and said that everyone knows the 5-star rating. Starting from the 20th place, there are national fighters in it. So if Tank is killed, Insik can also become a top-level mercenary. At that moment, to the surprise of the PMC director, Suri wrapped her steel thread around him. Go. Insik tried in vain to free himself. His axe could not cut the extremely strong rope. The girl addressed the captive, calling him the one who killed the most people in their area. Pulling the wire tighter, she said she would take everything this heathen had and appease the people who despised him. Suri ran headlong at him with her fists. Tank, in turn, also swung to strike. However, they didn't succeed, because at that moment, Insik, who was shouting like a madman, dragged him towards Jerome. Suri and Hua Ryang were surprised by the presence of the stranger and the failed massacre of the enemy. Aswan Jerome advised the head of the PMC to change drones to other tactics. Otherwise, he would lose. The girl looked at the new opponent in surprise, not understanding from which side of the conflict he appeared, and she was sure that she had tied Go Insik well with a thread. But the stranger took it out with ease. Jerome asked the PMC leader to walk through the 4th floor of the abandoned building 3 meters to the northwest, where the main base was located, and finally did what he had to do. And he himself will have fun with his rivals at this time. In an instant, Hua Ryong pounced on the newcomer, and enraged Insik over the comm, ordered his subordinate to immediately send all the drones at once. He tried to explain that their command and control center was not set up yet. However, the head of the military company insisted that the best power was needed right here and now. He added that all the inhabitants of the area must be destroyed while Jerome works. Tank was momentarily distracted by Suri. Aswan took advantage of this opportunity, pushing the opponent away. Hua Ryong was surprised because he weighed 120 kilograms, but Jerome simply kicked him. Considering the weapons, Hua Ryong's opponent was not a master of hand-to-hand combat. Taking on his opponent, Tank rated him as a real guy. Deputy Leader Yaburi was worried, but Deputy Suri assured her that he would take care of it himself. The girl then said that she would block the drones and ordered him to take cover after he had dealt with the stranger. It was impossible to allow the Peak PMC to get to the shelter, otherwise everything would be over. Suri only gave Tank 5 minutes to complete the task. Aswan immediately approached the girl and invited her to stay, because there will be fun here. Tank ran up to Jerome and hit him with all his might. Hua Ryang then asked Suri to leave the two of them alone, and he himself would contact her right after the duel was over. Looking at her trail, Tank noted that the girl had not lost her self-control, even though it was the First War. She looked a lot like her father. Jerome noted with a smile that he liked his opponent's shot. Hua Ryung asked him where he came from. Aswan said that he is from the Philippines, but he really liked the Korean language, so he studied it. Then he asked if his pronunciation was good. Approaching Tank, Jerome said that the world today is quite boring. All his passion has disappeared, even from fights. After calling his name, he invited Hua Rying to have some fun and slapped him hard across the face. In response, Suri's assistant also called out his full name and punched back hard. For some time, the heated fight continued on an equal footing, although the powerful blows of each of the opponents caused damage to both. At some point, Tank remembered a conversation with Tae-ha when he said that he trusted his skills, so he could pass by. The fighter still could not understand why. However, he was very interested in this question. Lee Hua-ryung was once the leader of the 5 Stars in the early days of the Changso War. At the time, Yaburi's boss, Yoon Ki-seop, was his close friend, who was also a former member of 5 Star. Somehow a conversation took place between them. Tank told his friend that he would take responsibility and relocate the residents to new apartments with a nice view. However, Suri's father reminded him that most of the people in the area were quite elderly. They cannot live outside the city for 10 years and die just to get a new apartment. Kai Seop gleefully assured that he was going to fight to the end even if he had to die. The only thing that bothered him was his daughter. So he asked Tank for a favor. The leader confidently said that in the event of his death, he would leave all decisions to Hua Ryong. During the duel with Jerome, Tank recalled that he originally joined the 5 Stars because he wanted to learn the power. However, he saw only despair there. It was a world of real, strong people that Hua Ryong could never surpass. His forces remained at the 16th place in the hierarchy. Unfortunately, the understanding of this came to Tank only after the death of his best friend. For now, he knew that what makes him strong is not what is in front of him, but what is behind him. The fierce fight did not lose its intensity. Strong blows rained down on each of the opponents from all sides. Suri's assistant saw himself as a person who paves the way for those who follow Lee Hua-ryung's locomotive. Aswan remarked disapprovingly why Tank was so serious since they were just having fun. Jerome then announced that he had decided to be more serious as well and struck his opponent's back with his claw hammer. He advised the fighter to go without pain. Hua Ryong was numb from the unexpected injury. It was at this time that a piece of the wall from the building fell on him with a thud and almost crushed him. Fortunately, Jin Tae-ha unexpectedly picked up the wall at the last moment. He prevented death from taking his friend. Our hero paid tribute to Tank for the work done and offered to give him unfinished business. So, the boy told Lee Hua-ryung that he did a good job and turned back to his opponent with a serious expression on his face. Shouldering his weapon, Jerome announced with a gleeful smile that vendetta was late. Tae-ha asked Tank if he can move, since the wound on his back is quite deep. Recovering, he agreed that the injury was indeed deep, but not fatal. Our hero reported that if Hua Ryong walks a block across the street from here, he can see a black Hyundai Sonata by a telephone pole. In the trunk of this car is Hong In-gyu. Jin Tae-ha ordered him to be taken to a shelter while he dealt with Jerome himself. But the latter intervened in the conversation with the fact that he would not let go of his old acquaintance just like that. Picking up the lead from the sewer hatch with his claw, Aswan hurled it towards his opponent. Vendetta, in his turn, rushed at the opponent with an attack. An iron tire flashed before his eyes, which he managed to dodge. The emotional battle gained momentum. The dagger steadfastly resisted the enemy nail-eater. Tae-ha wondered if Jerome really called him his opponent, to which he agreed with a smile. And the intense fight between them did not stop for a moment. Defending himself, our main character said how it was possible to think of becoming a stalker, to which Jerome replied that it is one and the same. The explosions did not subside. On the roof of the building, Suri watched the night sky, stating that there were too many drones and she could not stay there. Through communication, the headquarters informed her that at the moment, the battles with the Peak mercenaries are going on 50 meters from the shelter in the quarter. Over the sound of gunshots, Gray added that the situation was dangerous, but the fighters would not be able to find them quickly. He then pointed out that the war will end when Jin Tae-ha arrives, and the important thing is to hang on until then. Kim Soo-on repulsed the enemy, constantly firing a machine gun. The mention of our hero made the girl stop. She turned, thinking about something. Opening the trunk door of the car, Hwa Ryung saw Hong In-gyu tied up. Tank thought that if he smashed the director's head, the war would be over in an instant. He assumed that if Tai-ha lost to Aswan, then the leader of Yaburi would not be able to stop the outsider. So it would probably be a better option to end the war here, and then ask 5-Star for help. Grabbing the captive's face, Hwa Ryung pondered that Yoon Ki-seop's enemy was behind all of this, and if he killed the client of the PMC peak, the mercenaries and Jerome would leave the battlefield. Suddenly, he saw 2 opponents from above leaping into attack, their weapons clashing with a loud sound. Tae-ha kicked the opponent away, and Jerome landed on the roof with a cheerful expression on his face. Getting to his feet, the latter revealed that he was initially surprised to hear that Vendetta was in Korea, but now it became clear to him why the main character is in this place. Picking up the hull of the split system with his claw, Aswan added that it was heaven for killers like them. Jerome made a lightning strike with the air conditioner. Tae-ha was unable to react in time and dodge the attack. He was thrown a few meters away and ended up on the roof of a nearby house. This amused the opponent. Firing bullets one after another from the machine gun, Kim Soo-on asked Gray if it was really possible to end the war with the arrival of one person. The student quickly agreed to this. The counselor then asked why he believed this and who Tai-ha was anyway. Gray said that Chung's group of executives who appeared on television were called the Royal Family. At this time, our hero crossed his daggers and attacked the opponent, inflicting near-fatal wounds. The terrorist and killer of the royal family comes from an aristocratic family. It would be more correct to call him a nobleman. Jerome and Vendetta met for the first time in England, because then their goals coincided. In another attack, Jin Tae-ha inflicted wounds with his dagger on Aswan's legs. Because of that, having fallen on the rails, he could not get up, and the high-speed subway train was rushing towards him. Our hero awkwardly turned away so as not to see the scene of the death of his opponent. At the time, he thought he had killed Jerome for sure. Tae-ha thought the same when he killed a traitor who was trying to escape to Russia. Together with Aswan, they collided again in flight when the two of them jumped out of the plane. During the freefall, the men, regardless of the circumstances, intensively tried to kill each other. But our main character was the first to cut Jerome's backpack straps with a parachute. He kicked his opponent away to hasten his fall, but even then, he did not die. Jin Tae-ha noticed that each time they met, Aswan was getting stronger and stronger. About the blow of the current battle, Jerome said with a smile that it was shallow, light. He also noted that Tai-ha hit with his right hand, with less effort than when he used his left hand. Aswan teased our protagonist that he missed another chance to kill him. After that, he delivered a powerful blow. Vendetta was thrown back by the wave, but he kept his balance. The fierce struggle continued. During the attack, Jerome asked how such a fighter could damage his hand. Tae-ha dodged and didn't answer. Aswan continued and said that from now on, he knew exactly why he came to Korea. After all, in this crazy country, where the president was killed and a lawlessness zone was created, it would be quite unfair if there were no such strong people. However, the best among them is only one, and that is Vendetta. Jerome struck another blow. During the attack, he admitted that our hero was the only one who pushed him to the brink of death and made him stronger because of it. Cutting off a piece from the cylindrical tank, he tossed it at Tae-ha. The boy could not dodge and was covered with iron. Jerome took advantage of the situation and, jumping up, delivered a powerful blow with his nail-eater. When he landed in the middle of the street, damaged pieces of iron lay before him in a puff of smoke. Aswan looked at them in surprise, wondering if Tai-ha had even dodged the blow. He was sure it wasn't, except if the opponent could hide from his eyes. then it is possible. Suddenly, an enemy dagger flew at Jerome, but he successfully repelled it with his nail cutter. Aswan vehemently announced that Vendetta had failed yet again. However, the enemy did not remain silent. Moving quickly, our hero assured the daredevil that he would deal with him this time. Jerome, who did not expect such agility from Tai Ha, was quite surprised at how quickly he was in front of him. The fierce struggle continued with new fervor. Vendetta dealt a fatal blow to the enemy. Our hero reported that he, like Jerome, becomes stronger after each encounter with death. Meanwhile, Yoon Soo-ri skillfully jumped from one building roof to another. She reasoned that the location of the drone operators was the last she had heard over the radio, so she needed to deal with them quickly and get back to headquarters. Suddenly, the girl noticed men downstairs who were putting a wounded soldier into a car. Suri thought that this might be a new side of the conflict since she didn't know who they were. One of them also noticed her and informed her that they were a 5-star special unit. The man explained to the girl that they were here on the orders of their leader, Jung Hui-min. It was at this time that Vendetta and Jerome were approached by the head of the same special unit. Hui-min asked our hero what he should do if he was ordered to kill Tai Ha. The latter carefully looked at the man who had appeared so unexpectedly. Vendetta remembered that this was the boy he had recently met and had taken pity on. He wondered how he found out about this place. Tae-ha thought that Ingyu couldn't summon him because the fighter wasn't from Chong. Also, the man did not attack from behind to kill him, but instead engaged in open combat, teasing him. Our hero asked if he was sometimes not from 5 stars. To his credit, Tai-ha admitted that he was unusual. He thought about this immediately after their first meeting. Jung Hui-min thanked for the compliment. He asked our hero if he hadn't heard what would happen to those who decided to resist. Vendetta admitted that he had heard something, but he was not the first to cross the border in Changzhou district. Unexpectedly for these two, Jerome, who they had forgotten about for a moment, quietly spoke the word Chonggu. The surprised interlocutors looked at the man with fear. Both were sure that he must have been dead. Tae-ha grabbed his second dagger lying on the ground and swung it at the enemy. Jerome managed to dodge the blow. After that, he took out from his jacket pocket an object that looked like a grenade with a fuse ring. The guy threw a metal cylinder in the direction of the opponent, saying, "See you later, friend." Suddenly, a bright light blinded the two men, and they had to cover their eyes with their hands. Jin Tae-ha wanted to catch up with the fugitive, but Hui-min hurriedly stopped him with his spear. Pointing his sword against his opponent, he decided to remind that he was the first in line. In response, our hero swung his dagger, but unexpectedly encountered strong resistance. Vendetta was very surprised that his movements did not come as a surprise to his opponent. Hui-min admitted that he couldn't keep up with his extraordinary speed yet. But Tae-ha started exactly like last time, so if he was hit again, it would be a complete failure for him. It looked like our main character wasn't in the best shape after the fight. At first, Tae-ha thought of his opponent as a strong man, but he turned out to be a genius who was just starting to grow. Vendetta wondered if that was indeed the case. Then Jung was in a position to listen to his opinion in 5-star. Our main character spoke out loud. He knows that Hui-min does not want blood. Tae-ha asked if his assumption that the man had never killed anyone was true. Hui-min frowned and tried to attack the opponent, but he was immediately behind him. This annoyed Jung quite a bit. Approaching the enemy, he sharply replied that he was often beaten half to death. Tae-ha told him to go up to the 3rd floor of an abandoned building half a kilometer to the northwest. Local residents hid there. Our hero then added that Hui-min could never kill him, but could achieve some results. In a moment, Tae-ha was gone, and the annoyed rival was staring at the empty street in surprise, then anger. Meanwhile, the armed conflict did not subside for a moment. Seoul's 5-star special forces relayed a message. All who heard it were called to attention. At the sound of shots, oppositionists were offered to surrender immediately, otherwise they would be dealt with. Annoyed, Go In-sik grudgingly remarked that the 5 stars had already arrived. He wondered if they had sent a spy too. Gray backed into a corner. He asked the injured Kim Soo-on if he was okay. To which the counselor replied that the student should keep his voice down, and he was fine, but they shouldn't be heard. In-6 subordinates turned to the commander and reported that there were now 2 people in the shelter. There was also an ambush in the neighboring buildings, so it is dangerous here. They suggested he back off as the 5 stars had already arrived, but the director of the PVC ordered them to close the Pelka. At this time, In-6 himself was thinking about money. The amount was more than 10 billion won, so this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Holding the machine gun, Suan confidently offered the opponent a look at who would make it to the end. The PMK leader thought that it would be better to just kill the commander-in-chief, and Jerome would take care of the rest. The most important thing for him was to do everything quickly and escape. Unsuspecting, In-6 decided to kill that guy himself and get rid of all the residents. But at that moment, someone covered his face with a hand. It was Li Huarayong. He asked his enemy if he had valued their lives at only 10 billion. In-6 swung his axe threateningly at his opponent, but went all the way. Tank intended to punch him, saying that he would pay for all the blood he had spilled. Ahead of the opponent, the fighter struck a powerful blow. The PMC director flew out of the building and fell. His subordinates, watching the situation, shouted. When she reached them, Suri looped her strong rope around the necks of the mercenaries and strangled the men. The body of the murdered man was already lying below. The girl noted with relief that everything was over. A few minutes after that, Hui Min appeared. Passing the dead In-6, he confidently climbed the steps. When the man entered the room, he was very surprised. He asked what was going on. There were 3 people at the table, Yoon Soo-ri, Jin Tai-ha, and Hong In-gyu tied to the chair. Jokingly, our hero said that they had not seen each other for a long time and offered Jung to sit on the 4th empty chair. Tae-ha said that the representatives of Jiangzhou and Jeonggu district were gathered here now, calling everyone by name. And since a delegate from 5 stars came, it meant that everyone was in the congregation. Vendetta proposed to complete the Changzhou district renovation project during today's talks to reach a mutually beneficial outcome.